Someone make it make sense.
Probably a couple.
Hey everybody, so I was in the wrong stream. That was fun. I was in part 4, which I had scheduled for tomorrow. Accidentally clicked on that because with the way StreamYard has it, it doesn't show you the entire title. And when you have multiple streams set up, anyway, I clicked on part 4 and started streaming with that. And then I realized, oh, I'm on part 4, not part 3. So I ended the stream and then I'll get that set up again for tomorrow. Jesus Christ. I just clicked on the wrong stream. So anyway, but we're here now. So this is a do-over, as it were. Excellent. Okay, so now we have the right stream and we are here. Yay. Wonderful. Okay, so what happened thus far? All right, well, okay, here's what we're doing. So what I started out by saying is that the first thing I realized when I was doing timestamps of the previous live stream, that's hilarious. I know, it's, dude. One thing that'd be great, StreamYard, if you're listening, is if you can make it so that where it shows all the upcoming streams, if you can widen that so we can see the full title, that would be helpful. Thanks. Because otherwise, the words that it shows are the exact same when you've got more than one stream set up for the same case when it comes to stuff like this, right? Where they're grouped by cases. Anyway, okay. Yes. So welcome, Deb. Glad you're here, y'all. All right. So I realized when I was doing timestamps for the previous BK live stream that somehow we didn't finish reading this document because we got to this part and then we went back to the 911 call transcript. And then I thought we'd finished this document and then we moved on to something else. So anyway, we're going to start out by finishing this, which is great because I actually had some more things I wanted to say. So one thing is this. So I was thinking about how in the 911 call transcript, somebody says, can we just tell you what happened? It all started at around 4 a.m., right? And as we know, these pick up at 4:22. And we talked a lot about this last time where clearly there had been prior conversation between DM and BF before this. There could also have been other text messages or calls to the victims. We don't know. We only know what they include in this motion to eliminate, right? But it's clear that this conversation here is picking up where they'd already had some type of communication prior, okay? So one thing I was thinking about, and the one that I just ended because I was on the wrong stream, was I was thinking, what was it they said about people being asleep or DM being asleep? So I already have this pulled up, which works out. So yes. So I was thinking to myself, wasn't she asleep? Yes. So this says, this is from the PCA, DM stated she originally went to sleep in her bedroom. So again, this is indicating that eventually she does go downstairs to BF's room, right? Originally went to sleep in her bedroom and that she was awoken at approximately 4 a.m. But by what she stated, sounded like Gonsalves playing with her dog, right? Then she heard there's someone here, et cetera, et cetera. So again, at around that time, it sounds like is when maybe the text messages / phone calls would have started to like what's going on. Now, remember, it's one of those things where it's like, if she didn't think there was something weird, it wouldn't have warranted. And I talked about this, I think on the last stream as well, right? Where it's like, it could be one of those things where it's like your gut feeling is like something's wrong. But like, if you're someone who's prone to lucid dreaming, but you're also like shit-faced, right? And also you're a young college kid and you don't want to be like, it would be hard to like, if you're hearing sounds that you're not sure what's going on and it's like, okay, either it's nothing or people are being stabbed to death in the house. What do you think you're going to like? What is the most likely situation, right? What is the most likely situation, especially if you're drunk, especially if you have, these crazy dreams or whatever, like, Occam's razor, right? What is the most likely situation here? Maisha, long time no see, my friend. Welcome, welcome. So happy to see you. So because the thing is this, right? It's like what she reports to law enforcement is pretty benign, right? The playing with the dog. There's someone here. It's like nothing that's like indicative of like, for sure there's murders happening, right? However, clearly her gut was like, something's not right, because if she thought this was just normal, there wouldn't have been any need to text, right? That's what I'm getting at here. Like, there wouldn't have been any need to like be calling people or texting people if this was just any old random, this is typical, right? It's just another weekend at the house or whatever, right? So again, all that to say that she probably either heard things that were more murdery, if you will, than what we know so far. Or maybe it's just, again, it could have just been her brain not processing it, which makes, honestly, is understandable. Because it would seem very surreal, right? Okay, so, but from what we have here in this motion in limine, right, the 422 is where this, we have this starting here. So, okay, so again, all right, I read this, but this was on the wrong stream, right? So we have all these exchanges. We talked a lot about this on the last stream about Xana wearing all black, about come to my room and this choice to come to the room, right? And we talked about this, and, you know, I had offered, I think, maybe kind of two different thoughts in terms of why she might make that decision to go down to the room. And one of them was like, if you saw the person walking away from the door, like your bedroom door, but you think maybe they saw you, maybe you could maybe make the decision to leave your room because you think, well, maybe they know where you are and they could come back and get you, maybe, right? But another thing I had mentioned was like, it could just be something of like, it's safer if you're with someone else, right? The two people are better than one. So, welcome everybody. ABC's Docket, Jeff H, Twiz is here. Welcome, welcome. So, okay. So this is where we didn't read all this last time. So we're reading it now. All of the above declarations are present sense impressions and excited utterances. This is supported by DM's grand jury testimony where she indicates she just witnessed a startling event, i.e. heard noises in the residence and saw an unknown male in the residence. The declarations indicate both BF and DM are trying to make sense of the startling event contemporaneously or immediately following the startling event. And then it says, i.e. no time for reflection or fabrication. Now, don't get all caught up in this fabrication, right? This doesn't mean that they're saying anything's fabricated. This is a reference to the case law that lays it out with what is a distinguishing factor between an excited utterance and why it is an exception to the hearsay rule. And we talked about this a little bit last time as well, right? We went through those standards. Okay, so, but now 424:39, DM calls Ethan Chapin and it's unanswered. Now, this is interesting, right? This is the first time that we know of that she calls Ethan. Now, it could be because she thinks maybe he knows where Xana is, right? It's her significant other, maybe. Or maybe she looked out a window and saw Ethan's car. I don't know, right? Okay, this phone record, like the other records of calls, is not a statement pursuant to Idaho Rules of Evidence 801. DM and BF continue to text. So this means at 424:39, she still has not gone down to the room. So is anybody else thinking of that song, like, come to my window, whatever it is? Okay, so 424:27. So a total of 12 seconds pass or elapse. She's not yet responded to Bethany. Okay, so Bethany, BF says, run, come to my room, run down here. She's not responded yet. She calls Ethan. And then after that, apparently they continue to text. Okay. So then at 424:58, DM texts BF, I'm squirreled though. And BF responds, yeah, I know, but it's better than being alone. So this business right here, the context, because this is a reply to this. And by the way, it looks like her phone hasn't died yet. And the Celebrate report will show if she plugged her phone in and what the battery state was as well, by the way, guys. Oh, Jeff H is saying, I really think there's a question missing after the Xana was wearing all black sentence. Bethany asking for clarification of what. It could be. I interpreted this, if there's not a question, and there could be a question mark missing, right? But if there isn't, my thought was that maybe she was with Xana earlier and saw her and she was wearing all black. And actually one of the first places my mind went to was, we've got like the grub truck. And then I was like, wait, no, Xana wasn't there. And then I was trying to remember, I don't think there's any video footage of Xana from earlier that night. Right. But it sounds like she's telling her Xana was wearing all black, so that, like, my interpretation was that prior to where this picks up, they had already talked and DM had said something about seeing somebody in all black. And this is BF saying Xana was wearing all black, as if to say that could be who you saw, basically. But we talked about this a lot on the last live stream, but that's just sort of a summary of what I thought. This was clearly responding to DM referencing seeing someone in all black, in my opinion. Even if it was a question mark, clearly this would be something you would say if this was picking up from a prior conversation, right? Okay, yeah, Bethany was at the party with Xana. So then there you go. So she saw Xana wearing all black, apparently. Yes. So what I was saying though is, like, Sheena hadn't responded to Bethany yet with come to my room, fuck down here, and just how we talked about last time, this debate about would you stay or would you go? How would you make that split decision? This has got to be scared. I'm scared though. That's got to be what that is. And it's not this is riddled with typos. It doesn't surprise me at all. I'm scared though, right? And the response, yeah, I know, but it's better than being alone, which is exactly one of the things I suggested when I said one of the reasons why you might make that decision to go downstairs is because you might think two people is safer than being alone, right? So that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, and it's not even really, I don't know that it's a theory. It's just that from trying to interpret what they're saying, it sounds like Bethany is trying to, like, comfort her in a way of, like, like, think about it, right? If DM's freaking out, I saw somebody in all black. It's like, well, Xana was wearing all black, right? It's almost like, you see what I mean? Like, I think that's what it reads like to me, of, like, trying to find a logical way to explain something, right? If it's just somebody wearing all black, yeah, that could have an explanation if there's somebody wearing all black, right? I think they're trying to figure out, like, is this real deal? Do we need to be, like, you know what I mean? Like I said, it's, like, got to be tough to process this. If you're hearing things, it's like, is your mind playing tricks on you? I mean, the last thing it makes sense to me that in this situation with what we've got going on with these kids being young and being drunk and all that, it's like, if you think, God, are people being murdered in the house? It makes sense to me that you'd be like, there's no fucking way, right? I must be dreaming, or I must be crazy, or whatever, right? The odds of that, right? Especially, like, probably pretty much anywhere, but, like, I don't know. It would be so surreal, right? And again, Occam's razor, right? What is the most likely and most logical explanation? Well, somebody else is wearing all black. Right. Yep. Exactly, Jeff. Yep. Bethany is basically saying maybe it was just the NIPs that you saw because absolutely. That is 100% how I interpret that, for sure. Yep. The only thing I would like to know is, like, I would like to know, did anyone else see Xana wearing all black? Just to confirm it, And one of the things I said again on the last live stream is, it's interesting, the wearing all black, like, for me in college, I wore all black a lot, but that was because concert black for orchestra concerts, right? So, like, the vast majority of my wardrobe is black because concert black. But for people who aren't classical musicians, you might wear all black if you have a job that requires it, like a uniform, or maybe you just wear all black, right? And then maybe you're at work, or maybe you're at work and you have to wear all black and then you go out afterwards. I don't know. Okay. So then, yeah, it's better than being alone. Again, both statements are admissible as present sense impressions and excited utterances. They are describing an event or their state of mind and are spontaneous reactions to that event rather than the result of reflective thought. Then at 4:27:47, so this is like 3 minutes later-ish, DM calls Gonsalves, call unanswered. And at 4:28:44, DM calls Cronodal, call unanswered. So again, clearly doesn't think they're dead if she's still calling them, more than likely, right? Or she's just still, like, doesn't know what the fuck's happening. I mean, it's got to be just the most surreal fucking situation to possibly be in. 4:32:57. So now it's several minutes later. DM sends a text message to Gonsalves stating, please answer. This statement is a present sense impression, shows DM's perception of events and an excited utterance, spontaneous reaction to an event rather than the result of reflective thought. So what's interesting is like this motion in limine, right, is from the state wanting these to come in, which would be because the defense did not, or they anticipate the defense not wanting these in. And, you know, again, pretty benign, right? There's a call, goes unanswered. There's please answer. So it makes me wonder if this is because for timeline purposes, right? Because why else, right? Like, you know, just the fact that a phone call happened and went unanswered, right? Why would you not want that to come in? Well, if it's maybe to prove time of death. And that actually that's my brain follows that path to potentially the autopsy, which we don't know yet, right? But one thing I've talked a whole lot about is the autopsy, and are they going to, how narrow will they be able to get that window of time of death? And it could be that if they can only get it within a range of a few hours, which is entirely possible, it could be that through cell activity, like in Murdoch, that would be their best way to try to prove time of death. Maybe. Of course, you could say that they're just not answering because they're asleep, right? There's ways to argue this, right? I'm just thinking as to how this could play out at trial and why this is in this motion in limine. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I like all black. But I also like colors too. So yeah, but do you guys see what I mean with this timeline? Like, again, because like, why else would it be at an issue if it's like, it's just a call that goes unanswered? Well, a call going unanswered could be used to try to suggest time of death. Again, very Murdoch-y, very Murdoch-y. So as far as the DoorDash driver, I believe there was a photo of the delivery. I believe there was. And my recollection is what happened with that was it was left. They didn't hand the food to a person. They left it on the doorstep or whatever, took a picture of it. And I believe the DoorDash was 404. Pretty sure. 99% sure. My memory's pretty good. I think it was 404. Pretty sure. I'm sure someone else in the chat will also remember, but I think it was 404. And I would imagine they will definitely be a witness at trial. And I think it was a guy. Don't know what kind of car they drove. I'm just answering these myriad questions. It was a guy, I believe. I don't know type of car. The dash cam is a good question. I don't know about that. I would imagine if they had it, it would have been talked about, right? I don't think they're required to have dash cam, right? So, but witness at trial, I would say that's probably a definite there. Good question. We don't know. The food was found in the house. And we know that Xana was on TikTok or whatever. It seems like that was retrieved and she had the food. Although I remember there was talk of it being on the kitchen counter. But then there was some talk about maybe that was a different DoorDash delivery from another time period. My thought was like, if you're ordering food at that hour and your food is being delivered, like you're probably awake because you're eating it and you're on TikTok. Like I pictured her, this is just my personal brain. Like I pictured her on TikTok eating her food, right? And then she's going to go to bed after. And Ethan maybe is already asleep. That's just what I pictured. Doesn't mean that's what happened, but seems like that would be the normal series of events there. Like, why would you order the food and then leave it downstairs and not eat it and then be awake in your room and not eating your food, right? I thought it was found. I thought the bag of food was found, though. I thought the bag of food was found in the kitchen counter. I mean, do we know for sure, though? I don't think, okay, the mechanisms of the doors locking, I don't think that's in any of the court filings. And, you know, that if you guys remember from those of you guys who were following with the Zachary Hughes trial, dude, the door locking situations are all over the map, right? There's even more possibilities than even I have had experience with doors locking. And who was it? I believe it was Frankie Figs. Shout out to Franks, who was saying how she has a door that does something similar to the door that was in that trial that had a really crazy locking system. But basically there's some doors that will lock automatically behind you. And there's definitely some, my doors at this house do not auto lock. They only lock if you lock them, for sure. So, welcome, Echoes of Clarity. Happy to see you again. Okay, that looks like an old bag. Okay. So we don't know, but we don't know, right? If there was a bag, I mean, if there was a DoorDash bag at the house, I mean, I don't know. Again, I just feel like it would be so unlikely that she's awake, she's waiting on the food, she's on TikTok, the food comes, you get a notification that the food's there, and why would you not go get the food and eat the food, right? It just doesn't make sense to me. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that is what is in the documents. Like, we've seen that. The TikTok at 412, that is in plenty of documents. So that is what I would expect to see. I don't know about that website, but yeah, that is the same as what we've seen in these court filings about 412 on TikTok. So again, my interpretation of that is up on TikTok, awake, eating her food. That's just what that seems like to me. Because again, why would your food's there? Why would you not go eat the food? I don't know. Okay, so one thing, just going through this step by step, we don't know yet if DM is still in her room or not at this juncture, right? Because BF says, yeah, it's better. I know it's better than being alone. And that's at 4:25:16. She maybe does go down through, well, we're going to keep reading, right? But at this point, she has not responded to that message to say, to affirm or deny when or what she's doing. But she calls Kaylee at 4:27 and then texts Kaylee at 4:32. So she could still be in her room, or she could be downstairs in BF's room. The next morning, DM sends the following text messages starting at 10:23:23. DM to Gonsalves, please answer. DM to Mogan, are you up? DM to Gonsalves, are you up? Starting at, it doesn't say how much time elapsed between them. And the 911 call was at 11. What was it? 11:26 or something like that. I forget. Somewhere. It was in one of the documents we read last time. Or was it 11? I'm sure someone of you guys probably remembers. It was 11 something. I'm just thinking, was it a half an hour? Was it an hour? For some reason, my brain's like thinking 11:36, but that may not be right. It was 11 something. Never forget the foundation in the bathtub. Maybe that's an inside joke. Sounds like an inside joke to me. If nobody remembers exactly the time of that 911 call, I'll go looking for it. Again, it was in one of the documents we covered last time. So what did we read after? Let me look here. Was it the state's motion? I wonder if it was actually in this document, but earlier. Well, anyway, if I need to go looking for it, I will. I'm gonna keep reading for right now. Thank you, Deb. Thank you. 11:58. Woo, you win. Thank you so much for that. Awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So later than I was thinking, okay, 11:58. All right, thank you. Okay. So okay, it was an inside joke. Okay. So Xana broke someone's mom's. All right, cool. Thank you for that, Deb. Ballard Foundation. Got it. Okay. So the text messages are not hearsay because they will not be introduced for the truth of the matter asserted. Even if deemed hearsay, they are allowable as present sense impressions, as they reflect a consistency and continuation of DM's text messages from the night prior and reflect her then perception of what was occurring, i.e. waking up and realizing that she'd not heard from her roommates. 11:39:09, DM has a text exchange with her father. BM. Okay, that's her dad. Okay. These statements are not hearsay, and as they will not be introduced for the truth of the matter asserted, but instead to show a timeline for the morning. At 11:55, DM receives a text message from Jay stating, bro. This text message will not be introduced for the truth of the matter asserted. 11:58, DM calls EA. Oh, 11:56. Okay, thank you, Deb. This phone record is not a statement pursuant to IRE. DM receives a text message from Jay at 11:51 and a vandal alert at 1:04. Okay. DM and BF testimony. Okay. So the state anticipates that both DM and BF will testify at trial. The state intends to ask each witness about statements made to them on November 13th, 2022. This testimony should substantively replicate the testimony they provided at the grand jury proceedings. The state submits that the statements from both DM and BF to each other are allowable hearsay because they are the present sense impressions and/or excited utterances. Previous adjudication. Judge John Judge has previously ruled that the text messages and statements of DM to BF are present sense impressions and excited utterances, holding both the text messages and testimony of BF as to what DM told her were admissible as exceptions to the hearsay rule. So real quick, just closing the loop on this going downstairs thing, it would seem to me then that she probably goes downstairs after this text here that it's better than being alone. And then from BF's room, makes those subsequent phone calls and potentially uses her phone charger. Well, I'm sure we will learn at trial. Okay, so under Idaho Rules of Evidence 803, present sense impressions and excited utterances are admissible, whether or not the declarant is available as a witness. Now, what does that mean? It means because remember last time we talked about excited utterances from like a dying statement, like on your last breath or whatever, that would be declarant unavailable. They're saying an excited utterance can apply as an exception to hearsay, even if the declarant is available, right? So alive. Any statement found outside of the above exceptions to hearsay are non-testimonial for purposes of a Crawford analysis. Further, even if somehow deemed testimonial, the Confrontation Clause of the Sixth Amendment does not bar their admission. Okay, I'm going to read all that. Conclusion. Silly makeup. Hold on. Putting makeup on, making a mess of Xana's face. Yeah, that I don't know what is the interesting thing, Jeff? I mean, that seems likely if there's a makeup challenge and they spill makeup, but I don't know if that's supposed to be important in terms of the case itself. Yeah, if you can say what's interesting without doxing anybody, then that would be great. I don't want to dox anybody. I think I would imagine that you could probably elaborate without doxing anybody. But I appreciate your sensitivity to that. Okay, so now on to the next document, guys. Should we do a swoop? Let's do a swoop. Let's do this one.
But you'll agree with me, justice in general is a good thing?
Big fan of justice.
Fair, me too. No further questions.
Word. Okay. So now we have defense motion in limine here, excluding Amazon click activity evidence at trial. Now, notably, it's click activity. It's not like a receipt or a purchase. It's click activity. Okay. Okay, more specifically, the defense asserts that with the limited disclosures made by state, lack of raw data, lack of complete data, lack of disclosure of expert opinion, lack of explanation of Amazon click activity, or any analysis related thereto, amounts to cherry-picked limited data that does not show a full picture compared to warrants that requested extensive data. The state's refining of all the Amazon history and Amazon click activity is out of context, incomplete, and unfairly prejudicial, thus making it inadmissible. Incomplete, irrelevant, unfairly prejudicial evidence is barred by rules, a bazillion of them, of the Idaho Rules of Evidence and pursuant to amendments of the Constitution. This motion should be read in conjunction with motion to eliminate 2, excluding expert Shane Cox and any other expert the state intends to use regarding all Amazon evidence. So motion to eliminate number 2, is that one of the ones? Hold on. Oh, right. Okay. I think I was planning on doing this one. Let me take a look. I'm pulling it up. Okay. Okay, what I'm going to do is this. We're going to read this entire document, but for right now, I'm going to read the part that pertains to Shane Cox real quick, and then we'll come back since it's referencing. So this is an entire document, again, 13. We'll read this entire thing, but what we'll do is if we're going through a document that references this, we'll read the part that pertains to that specific thing. So Shane Cox, here it is. All right. So S5, that being exhibit, Mr. Cox, Amazon. Testimony must be excluded because no opinion or full analysis of the data has been provided. It appears Mr. Cox has credentials to gather data at Amazon, but nothing disclosed indicates he has the expertise to form an opinion on data. And if he does have an opinion based on analysis, neither the analysis or opinion has been disclosed. The full amount of raw data received from Amazon has never been disclosed. Only narrow dates with some purchases have been disclosed. Oh, there's the purchases. Despite warrants seeking very broad materials over the span of a year and according to warrant returns produced. Excel spreadsheets apparently relied on by the state have redacted purchases without explanation. Context for purchases at least 6 months prior to what have been provided are critical for drawing opinions. Yeah, it's odd that the state would be redacting any of them, right? There's no full disclosure or analysis of clickstream history that spans the scope of multiple warrants and subpoenas. There's no full Amazon advertising history, AI-driven recommendations, or cookies disclosed or analyzed. The identification of the devices used is not disclosed or analyzed. No cart or wish list data is disclosed or analyzed. No omnichannel tracking data or platforms are disclosed and analyzed for a household where multiple members used the same Amazon account. The search warrants request account-wide data, including linked accounts and device identifiers for a year span. That has not been produced, analyzed, or explained as an expert opinion. Mr. Kohberger cannot prepare to confront purported evidence against him that is undisclosed and lacks context. The state has produced a select portion of a whole record. The state has cherry-picked information. He cannot determine if the state is asserting a direct search or review of items algorithmically suggested through Amazon's ad system. Testimony must be prohibited pursuant to Idaho Criminal Rule 16, Idaho Rules of Evidence, the court scheduling order, and okay, there we go. So there's Michael Douglas. Okay, so that's as it pertains to this Shane Cox. Okay, cool. So now we have that. We did it. We followed the instructions, Ann Taylor. We heard you. We did it. Okay. And let's just see what Jeff's saying here. Okay. Well, if it's relevant at all to the homicides, I mean, if it's just a matter of explaining how the bottle broke or whatever, I think I don't know. I don't feel like I am needing clarification on that. It makes sense that whether somebody dropped it or it was a makeup challenge, I don't know. I'm not worried about why the foundation broke, but if there's some relevancy to the homicide, then sure. So that's a good question right here, Deb. Deb says, if all the household members use the same account, would the prosecution have to disclose items like women's undies that BK obviously didn't buy? Well, the first question I would have is how would you know who bought them, right? Because you can't assume that dudes don't buy women's underwear. It happens, first of all. But second of all, the first thought that I had when I read that, I mean, I didn't stop to say it, but the thought that I had was household. I mean, he was not, okay, a year. So it says for a year, right? I mean, I don't think it's really quite entirely clear when he came to Idaho, right? Or sorry, Washington, right? Or exactly the timeline of that. But like, I don't think he was there for a full year, right? So, and my understanding is it's kind of unclear, was he in Pennsylvania or was he at DeSales? So, but even if you think about where he was immediately or like right before the homicides, right? Household, you know, him and his other, whoever the roommate was, they weren't going to be using the same Amazon account, right? So it's interesting. I mean, who all shares an Amazon account with an entire household? Maybe if you've like got kids and there's like a family account. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting because I'm like, household, right? Like if you're in college, you have your own account, right? And it's not shared with other people. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting for that reason, because it's like, who would be using his account? Why would it be a household account? Doesn't make sense to me. But barring that, I would say that, you know, if it's unclear who bought it, because let's just say that it is a situation where you've got a family or whatever using all one account, you know, it might be that they've maybe asked the other household members what did you buy? If it's something that they know was not purchased by the defendant and they know that it was from somebody else, then I would imagine it would be excluded, right? There'd be no reason to embarrass, you know, unless there was something relevant. Like, let's just say there's a household member that bought a pair of underwear and then a defendant, I'm not even saying for this case, but for any case, right? And then the defendant took the underwear and did something with the underwear, or was wearing the underwear at the time of the crime, then that will come in, right? You know what I mean? There would have to be some reason to make for it to be relevant. Remember, for evidence to be admissible, it first has to be relevant. That's the biggest thing to keep in mind. Okay, there were some people saying that the killer grabbed the phone and typed. That seems crazy to me. I don't know. I don't know why people would think that. That seems crazy. I mean, that's one of those things where I don't think people need to try to go out of their way to disprove that, because that seems crazy. Like, why would, you know, people are going to just say whatever. I don't see any. Yeah, that's crazy to me. So I appreciate, though, that Jeff, that you're going above and beyond to try to prove something that shouldn't have been needed to be proved in the first place. That's why I was like, I don't understand. That's crazy. Yeah, okay. I feel confident it was Xana's posting as well. Right. Okay. I see. I just didn't think that it would ever be necessary. You know, I never thought that would be necessary, but I see what you guys are saying. Okay. June 2022. Okay. Thanks, guys. Right. Okay. So then, yeah. So then a year prior, right? So then household, maybe it was the household from Pennsylvania, you know? Hi, Kimmy. Welcome. Interesting. So Deb saying, my nephew's been on his parents' Amazon Prime since he was in college, still on their 30. Interesting. Wow. To disclose all purchases. Are you saying at this juncture, or you mean like in general for any case, or the purchases are going to be, it's going to be case by case basis. It's going to be a case by case basis. You know, again, the first way that that's going to be looked at is it relevant, right? That's the first thing. And then there's a million other steps it's going to have to go through to make it into a trial, right? If unless it's uncontested, right? If nobody, that's why it's the adversarial system. If nobody contests it, then it can come in. But, you know, but yeah, if it's something that's just extraneous to somebody else and has literally nothing to do with the crime at hand, then the relevancy would keep it out in the first place. Oh, right. Yes. She did say that. Now, there was not there was not any mention of women's underwear, though, right? That was a hypothetical, right? Let's just see here. Cherry picked limited data that does not show a full picture. Yeah, I mean, my interpretation of that part with the cherry picking would be like stuff that pertains to the defendant's purchases, right? I mean, for example, I don't know, let's just say, for example, that they're going to show Amazon click activity of I don't know. I'm just trying to think of something random, like of air purifier filters. Okay, I'm looking at an air purifier. That's why I'm giving that as like air purifier filters, right? And then it's like, oh, but they left out the click activity of the air purifier itself, right? I'm just using that as an example as to like one purchase might not make sense without knowing another purchase that maybe, you know, because you know how it is on Amazon, right? You buy one thing and then it's like you buy the other thing that goes with the first thing, you know? That's kind of how I interpreted that, to where there might be something that they wanted to show for click activity that could look sus, right? But like if you get the full picture, potentially it looks less sus. That kind of is what I'm thinking. Yeah, it was a hypothetical. It was a good hypothetical. It was a good hypothetical. Who knows? There could be women's underwear on there. Who knows, right? You don't know. Could be. Stranger things have happened, guys. But that's how I interpreted that. So, okay. So the state disclosed Shane Cox as an expert who will testify about Mr. Kohberger's Amazon account activity. Activity on that account includes logins and Amazon click activity. Welcome, MCAT. We're talking about Idaho versus Bryan Kohberger. Shout out to MCAT. The state wants to use very specific narrow dates. The state has not defined Amazon click activity in any reports. That's interesting. I was wondering if this was going to come up, because I'm like, Amazon click activity, like that seems like a self-explanatory thing, but we all know that it's not that simple, right? We all know it's not that fucking simple. And I thought to myself, what is the actual definition? Well, the state has not defined it. So there you go. Jesus Christ. In any reports or expert disclosures, nor provided any opinions or analysis related to the limited data it has produced. The data produced is extremely narrow when compared to the more inclusive and broad warrants and subpoenas. Even in the face of the court telling the state that, quote, its job was not done, end quote, with its expert disclosures, nothing was not purchases. It's specifically click activity, which, as we just learned, has not been defined. So with its expert disclosure, nothing was produced in the state's rebuttal expert disclosure to further clarify the underlying data, analysis, and opinions it intends to offer regarding anything Amazon related. Mr. Kohberger faces his capital trial with no more than the state disclosing an expert testifying about dates related to Mr. Kohberger's Amazon account and the production of records and expertise regarding Amazon, quote, click activity, end quote. Because Mr. Kohberger is placed in a position of guessing what the state's intentions are, he has consulted an expert, David Howell, to attempt preparation. And that's one thing I will note. One thing we have not seen a motion in limine for is like Amazon purchases. It's just this click activity, right? But they're like, we don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. And there's a problem with the expert, as we went over a little bit earlier. Mr. Expert, oh my God, brain work. Okay, Mr. Kohberger. Wouldn't that be funny if somebody's name was Mr. Expert? All right, Mr. Kohberger has learned the limited disclosure leaves him unprepared to confront this evidence. In this ever-evolving age of technology, Amazon uses artificial intelligence, AI, to improve customer experience by helping customers find products that match their interests and preferences. Oh, looky here. We have a little link. You guys want to see what this is? That's interesting. That seems like a scroll hole right there, doesn't it? Oh, do we want to delve into this? What is it going to do? Continue. Oh my God. Okay. Primed for AI innovation. Look at these colors. I guess that's what AI is supposed to look like. This is so annoying. How do you expect me to read what's on screen if there's all this shit on here? Stupid. A foundation for your generative AI innovation. Interesting. This just looks sort of like trying to make them look like, this is not really explaining anything. This is just like, look at how cool we are. Like we're doing the things and like it's like advertising. This is not at all what I expected. I expected information and this is like ads. So no, back to where we were. Get out of here. Amazon's AI-driven system does not just reflect searches. It actively shapes user behavior through recommendations, paid advertisements, and algorithmic reinforcement. Amazon's use of AI began well before 2022. Often when searching for something on Amazon, the end of the pathway does not tell the beginning of the pathway. We've all been there, right, guys? This is because AI is continuously gathering information about the customer's interests and preferences and making suggestions along the way. Customer in the context of a household sharing an Amazon account is all members. Okay, let me read that again. Customer in the context of a household sharing an Amazon account is all members of the family sharing the account. So again, this is very interesting. So it doesn't sound like it's Bryan Kohberger's account. It sounds like it was the whole household. Now it doesn't say family, it says household. Interesting. In other words, the purchases, searches, and machine learning impact all of the users on the household Amazon account. So like anything that they're seeing could be anyone else in the household. Now, are we going to learn who was in the household? This is very interesting to me. Amazon, now, of course, right? The other thing too, well, so even if somebody's physically in a different location, right, they could still be using the household account and have things shipped to their new location. So it'd be harder to pinpoint who bought what. Okay. I can see how this could get tricky. And then you'd have to maybe you could narrow that down based on like the credit card or debit card used. Anyway, wow, interesting. Amazon's recommendation system powered by AI and ML, machine learning, significantly influences what users see and click on. I mean, I'm just thinking about this, right? Imagine you've got a household Amazon account, right? Let's just say you've got a family of 6 and 3 of them or whatever are in the same household. Let's say the other 3 are off at college or whatever, and they're in different states. And let's say that, 4 of the 6 each have their own debit or credit card that they use. And so then you've got 4 different addresses, at least 5 different credit or debit cards, at least. And they're all using the same Amazon account. They all are looking at different things, but it's all through the same account. Because you could use the same account, and then it's like you could select a certain card and a certain address. Imagine how, like, what a nightmare it would be to prove who bought what. Just saying. Crazy. In 2022, Amazon's AI-driven system did not passively reflect user searches, but actively guided purchasing behavior based on predictive models. This means that a user's browsing and purchase history may not necessarily reflect deliberate intent, but could have been shaped by Amazon's algorithm. Right, of course. I can't tell you how many times Amazon tries to get me to buy these stupid orchid pots that suck, and I'm never going to buy them. Amazon, stop trying. Omnichannel shopping extends beyond a single device. A user's Amazon activity spans across phones, tablets, laptops, desktops, and even smart home devices, all tracked and synchronized by Amazon. Shared household devices further complicate attribution as multiple users contribute to search history, ad targeting, and recommended patterns. Devices, for example, smartphones, computers, and tablets. Thanks for letting us know what those are. Talk to one another and learn from each other. For example, ads that pop up on Facebook and YouTube can be influenced by what you search for elsewhere. Yes, they can. Amazon's advertising system plays a critical role in shaping what users see and click on. Unlike a simple search and buy process, Amazon's AI-driven ad placements, keyword targeting, and personalized recommendations actively guide users towards specific products, like the stupid orchid pots I referenced that suck. Amazon specializes in driving suggestions that are not actively searched for by a purchaser, which is annoying, right? Because it's so annoying when you search for something specific and then it gives you suggestions like in the search that are not related to what you search for. I hate that shit. In this case, the state's refining or limiting the Amazon click activity to a specific click or a specific item excludes data, takes things out of context, and could tell a completely inaccurate story to cause the jury to speculate about intent. Like the example I gave with the air purifier filters, guys. See, that was a good one. That's exactly what I'm saying. Because you could imagine, take that example, and I'm sure you can think of other things where it's like the thing could be sus without knowing the other thing, right? I mean, for example, I buy my nitrile gloves on Amazon, right? Like, I don't think that should be sus, but I could see how the state in a murder case would try to do that. They do that all the time with these cases, right? I have like a box that's like 100 count of them, and like, not that I think it's sus, but if the state wanted, they could try to make it look like that's sus, right? But then if it went through all the different history and it showed that I was purchasing supplies to do at home, like hair blonding, like, lightener, developer, and salon grade products to do hair stuff myself at home. And with knowing that you should always be wearing gloves when doing that because it's not good for it to get on your hands, then it might be different, right? Just as an example. Full Amazon advertising logos and recommendation data must be reviewed to determine whether a purchase was truly user-initiated or heavily influenced by Amazon's AI. The data produced does not identify the purchaser through means other than by name or credit card, footnote 2. And that's so funny because I was literally just saying, okay, simply because a package is delivered to a name at a house using the credit card of someone in the house does not indicate that the person is the purchaser. That's true when it comes to an Amazon account. Yep, this is like I said, right? It could get really complicated here. If you're not I mean, my Amazon account is just me. It's pretty simple. It's me. I'm the only person on it, right? So, but if you've got a shared, you got multiple people and all this different shit, that's interesting. Okay. Nor does it identify the device from which the item was purchased. That's interesting to know. Wow. It just shows the account. Interesting. For example, yay, I love examples. Suppose someone buys a pair of binoculars on Amazon on a household account with 4 users. Who in the household either searched for binoculars or through some other searches triggered Amazon's AI to do a target ad for binoculars? How long were they searching for the binoculars? Were they wish listed for a period of time? Were they placed in the cart and removed? All of which could indicate indecisiveness. I don't know why there's a question mark there. Did an Amazon AI generated ad cause the purchase of binoculars as a result of search for some other product? Were other ads shown to the purchaser by Amazon? How long were the binoculars searched for? Again, well, were they even searched for? I mean, if that question wasn't already asked, I would add that into the mix. Were they even searched for? I mean, there's the one-click buy. You could buy things on accident with the one click, right? I'm pretty sure I've done that before as well. What types were considered or placed as target ads by Amazon? The punctuation here is atrocious, by the way. Were other purchases made around the same time that provide context? Other purchases made around the same time can provide context to the intent of the purchaser. Yeah. In our example, the shopper also purchased a sleeping bag, a tent, a cook stove, long johns, and a safety vest for an upcoming hunting trip. I see what they're saying. So binoculars to spy on people versus binoculars because you're going on a hunting trip. That's what they're getting at there. Compare the possibility that the purchaser instead bought rope, night vision goggles, zip ties, duct tape, a tarp, and a stun gun. Yep. These combined purchases, absolutely. Yep. Deb says, very annoying. I search for a vase and get suggestions for manure. Right. That type of shit. Ha. Accidental pun. Love it. Wow. Yeah. Amazon sponsored products and display. And that's the thing, because AI should do better than that, because that's not even like, how is it making that mistake, right? That's where I think the people that pay for their sponsored ads or whatever, it's like that seems to be a priority over the AI suggestions, because how does it make that mistake, right? Amazon sponsored products and display ads allow sellers to pay. Keep reading. Pay for visibility right here. Yep. Oh my God, this is exactly what I was just saying. Meaning that if someone searched for binoculars, camping gear, outdoor equipment, they could have been ad targeted with a gun or bear spray listing, not because they were looking for these items, but because an advertiser paid for it to appear. Ding, ding, ding. Yep. The thing that is so annoying right there. Sellers using Amazon's as a platform. Oh my God, there should not be an apostrophe S there. Sellers using Amazon as a platform to sell, specifically choose terms to prompt ads, and those terms may be completely unrelated to the item they are selling, yet that item will target an ad to get a purchaser's attention. Similarly, the frequently bought together and customers also bought sections often assumed to reflect organic trends are manipulated by paid placements. Yeah. Shared Amazon accounts also impact click activity or search history. This is another example of incomplete or limited data leading to an improper conclusion in a shared household Amazon account. One person in a household's interest in certain items impacts the entire household activity. And that's why it would be annoying to have a household account. I'm just saying. And attributed click activity. This can even be happened by the mere existence of proximity to a Wi-Fi network shared with others or shared by others. Interesting. There's another article there. This article explains the phenomenon where individuals believe their phones are eavesdropping on conversations, explaining that targeted ads often result from proximity advertising. Interesting. The Amazon click activity, for anyone who wants to read that article, by the way, it's in this motion in Limine number 9. It's probably interesting, but we're not going to scroll tangent that right now. Maybe we'll come back to it if you guys want. Let me know. The Amazon click activity in this case is for an account, which is a household account shared by Mr. Kohberger. Okay, now we have the family members. Interesting. Dude, this is wild. Oh my God. Wow. Can you imagine being his family? That sucks for them, right? Because I'm saying because he's a defendant in a murder case in the Amazon history, wow, man. Wow. Okay. So there's the household. It's the family members. All right. The click history includes items searched for or viewed on Amazon, which might be related to a search conducted by other family members or might be items suggested by Amazon based on prior interests or prior purchases in AI and ML making recommendations that make it look like click activity. I wonder if the family members will testify as to which items that they bought. Wow, that would be so fucking fascinating. Women's underwear. There you go, Deb. Could see it. Could see it in the future. So you're saying you appreciate the household account because you can see what your hubby is looking at and say no. That's funny. Right. Women's underwear, maybe. The discovery produced related to all Amazon data and the click activity in this case is extremely limited and therefore unconstitutionally incomplete, out of context, and inadmissible. And then here's the argument. Rule 106 guards against the introduction of incomplete evidence. In fairness, incomplete Amazon data and click activity should not be offered as evidence. Cherry picking, so they've already kind of referenced this. Unfairly prejudicial. And there's the relevancy. You guys, look, I was talking about this. There we go. Idaho Rule of Evidence 401 provides that. Evidence is relevant if, there you go, Deb, and everybody else too. A, it has any tendency to make a fact more or less probable than it would be without the evidence. And B, the fact is of consequence in determining the action. Right. Yep. There it is. Yep. 402 says relevant evidence is admissible under these rules. Is admissible unless these rules or other rules applicable provide otherwise. Irrelevant evidence is not admissible. Like I said, evidence first has to be relevant. Always remember. Rule 401 provides the test for relevancy. Yes, indeed. And then 403. I love a good 403 analysis, people. If it's probative value, that's the balancing test. Probative versus prejudicial. You guys have heard me talk about that a lot. We've seen this a lot in this case and all the others. Okay, so there we go. And on April 9th, they're going to offer testimony of David Howell as well, the defenses. Okay, next up, moving right along. I think this is the touch DNA, people. Yep, touch DNA. Here we go. Let's do another swoop.
It's a house.
All right. It's a house. All right, Rilene. So this is number 6. Rilene Nolan and the reference to touch and contact DNA comes now. So this is again defense motion. So all right. Motion eliminate excluding the testimony of Rilene Nolan in any testimony, 1, referencing the terms touch or contact DNA, or 2, purporting to be an opinion of the means or mechanism for DNA being placed on the sheath by any witness called to testify about DNA, both the term touch or contact DNA, or any opinion regarding how DNA ends up on an item is misleading in that it assumes facts that must be proven, would be confusing to the jury, and waste substantial time in debunking the testimony of an expert that is outside the purview of the field expertise and qualifications. Furthermore, the opinions of this expert have not been disclosed to Mr. Kohberger, as set forth below. The how and when of DNA arrives on an object cannot be scientifically determined and is not the proper subject of expert testimony. The use of this language confuses and misleads the finder of fact. What does that sound like? Oh, 402, 403, barred by rules 402, 403. Yep. As well as due process. Boop-a-doop-a-boo. Relevant facts. A knife sheath was recovered, tucked under the covers next to Miss Mogan. Tucked under the covers is interesting. At 1122 King Road. So instead of under the body, right, tucked under the covers. 1122 King Road, footnote 2. Okay, well, let's read the first footnote. The government has indicated that these terms will be used at trial. Ms. Nolan will testify about general topics such as touch DNA. Footnote 2, the exact location of speaking of which, the exact location of the sheath is unclear in both the photographs of the room and in the written description of its location. Well, that's a problem. The body cam footage of one of the first officers on scene shows the sheath tucked under the covers next to Miss Mogan. Interesting, okay. And then footnote 3, because we're about to read that part. While item Q1.1 was tested for DNA, it was never subjected to the standard biological testing for the presence of blood or saliva. Okay. We talked a lot about this when we read the transcript of the IGG hearing, right? You guys remember that? We went through that because we talked a lot about the blood, right? Because it was covered in blood, apparently, right? And then the snap. How the hell was it not Q1.1 is the knife sheath, right? I mean, come on. Because right here, in one exchange of emails, Riley Nolan described the swabbing as being of the leather strap and internal metal area of the snap. Okay. And I remember them discussing that. The snap itself may not have been swabbed at all for DNA. The defense has no ability to retest based on the fingerprint process of the sheath. Right. I just don't understand, because why the fuck, if you've got blood, I'm really fucking confused. Why would they not test the blood, right? Because, I mean, we had talked about this. We talked about it was likely, because it wasn't really, they didn't get into the blood during that transcript. But context clues was like, okay, it's got to be the victim's blood, right? But that's us, because they're not telling us, right? If you're investigating this, you don't do that. You test it. Why the fuck would you not test it? Because that would be better than touch DNA, right? That would be like, you know, regardless of whose blood it is and what, you know, that I just, what? I can't, why would it not be tested? Why? Or saliva? What the hell? Oh boy. Okay. And then we got another footnote. The other 2 male profiles identified in the ISP lab reports as unknown B and unknown D were never run through CODIS or subjected to IgG testing. There we go. Another thing we talked about. We were like, what happened? Did they ever put these through IgG? We knew that Brett Payne was like, we can't add anything else to CODIS. And that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But we kept thinking, like, why did they do anything else? Now we're getting answers to this now. We're getting answers, because those were the 2 things. We were like, we talked about the blood on the knife sheet. We talked about the other DNA, and was there ever subsequent anything done with it? And now we are getting answers here. They never did IgG with unknown B and unknown D. Incredible. The defense has never received an explanation as to why these 2 male profiles were not yet. That's disgusting. That's disgusting. What? We talked about this, right? Last time, or not last time, but when we went over that transcript, oftentimes crimes are done by more than one person, right? I mean, this is the dumbest thing I've ever fucking heard of. Like, why would they not test this shit? Why? Dude. There's no reason not to. There is no reason not to. There's no reason not to. Oh, my God. Dude. Which hearing, Deb? I don't know. They're saying here it didn't happen. I wouldn't be able to answer this question without having more specific information, like which hearing and what specifically was the context of that. Because, yeah, that's okay. If Heather was here, Heather would know. Heather, where are you? Because she has those hearings fucking memorized. But I would have to have more context to answer this question. But as far as right here, they're saying it wasn't, you know. Right here, it says the defense has no ability to retest based on the fingerprint process of the sheath. So as far as the sheath is concerned, the defense can't retest it. Now, as to whether or not the defense was maybe saying that they did some subsequent testing with the IgG for these other dudes, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, where's Heather? Heather, cuckoo. Okay, so the sheath was tested using standard DNA STR methods. Okay, right. And so Q1.1 swab from the sheath resulted in a single source male profile. This profile was uploaded to CODIS DNA database and resulted in no hits to known offenders. In its disclosures, the government has indicated that Riley Nolan from the ISP lab will testify as follows. Sip water. Ms. Nolan will also testify to touch DNA and transfer DNA. Specifically, Nolan will testify to the characteristics and nature of touch DNA, including how it is deposited and transferred to an item of evidence, the methods used to collect and preserve touch DNA samples from items of evidence, the procedures and protocols used by forensic scientists to extract and analyze touch DNA, the manner in which results from touch DNA samples are interpreted, and the reliability of touch DNA analysis and its acceptability in the field of forensic science. Nolan will also testify to the potential for DNA transfer between an individual and an object, including the distinction between primary and secondary transfer and the factors influencing the likelihood of transfer. On February 17th, 2005, the state produced a second round of disclosures, including one from Riley Nolan. As with the first disclosure, the focus of the second disclosure is touch/contact DNA and direct versus indirect transfer. Although conceding that currently DNA technology cannot conclusively answer the question, the state offers the following opinion. Many complicated factors can influence the likelihood of transfer DNA and the persistence of the transferred DNA after deposition, like after it's deposited, not like a deposition in a civil case. Current DNA technology cannot conclusively answer the question of when DNA was deposited on an item or by what mechanism, i.e. direct or indirect transfer. True. It is possible the DNA detected on this item resulted from secondary transfer. However, based on Nolan's training and experience, it is her opinion, given the quantity of DNA detected and given the DNA profile obtained, it is single source. It is more likely the result of a direct transfer. Argument. Introduction to the concept of touch DNA and transfer opinions. Okay, and then there's a footnote here. The government has not indicated what her opinion on any of these matters is, leaving the defense as substantial. It should say at a substantial disadvantage as to properly challenging the testimony other than in a general way. If the court is inclined to deny this motion, Mr. Kohberger would ask for the court to hold an evidentiary hearing, like Daubert, to explore Ms. Nolan's potential testimony in this regard. The terms touch and contact DNA came into use as the forensic community shifted from the testing of obvious identifiable stains, such as blood or semen, to samples that can not be identified via a biological test based on the increasing sensitivity of DNA tests. Samples such as, should say samples plural, swabs from steering wheels of a carjacked vehicle or window jams in a burglary were collected and tested on the theory that a person would have been in contact, they forgot the word been in contact with the object and left DNA behind in the form of skin or other cells. How many times have I said this, guys? Hey, Ann Taylor, I'll be y'all's proofreader. Look, I'll do it. You know, when you read the same, when you are involved in writing the document and you read it over and over again, you miss things, right? We all know that. I'm happy to do it. Hence the terms touch or contact. The forensic community began to conduct research into the question of how DNA in the form of biological material moves in the environment, and this research led to the conclusion that it is impossible to determine how a particular deposit of DNA came to be on an object. Side note, Twiz and I have been joking about how Ann Taylor needs to hire us, so you could add that to my offerings for the defense team. I'm joking, but I wish somebody would proofread this, though. In 2013, let me finish reading the sentence. A particular deposit of DNA came to be on an object. In 2013, an article which reviewed the state of the research at that time made the following conclusions. Full DNA profiles can be recovered from items that have not been touched, but have been in the vicinity of someone speaking or coughing. Sorry. It is not possible to establish from the amount of DNA recovered from a surface whether the DNA was deposited there by single touch or by regular use. It is not possible to it is not possible to use the amount of DNA recovered from an item of interest to inform whether the DNA was deposited by direct or indirect, or direct contact or indirect transfer. It is impossible to know from the quality of a DNA profile obtained whether the DNA was deposited by direct contact or indirect transfer. I guess Twiz isn't here anymore because he would have definitely chimed in on that comment. The authors introduced the concept of trace DNA defined. Oh, again, another mistake here. The authors who introduced. Fucking hell. It's not that hard. The authors who introduced the concept of trace DNA defined DNA that cannot yet be attributed to an identifiable body fluid. That's what they're saying they defined as trace DNA. The authors rejected the term touch DNA as misleading, as, quote, such a term infers that the DNA recovered from a surface got there via the surface being touched. But this is usually not known. Did you hear what I said, though? Because I referenced something specifically to you, Twiz. Take it back. I'll take it back if you heard what I said. Because you of all people should be especially excited, right? In our bid to be hired by the defense team. Okay, good. I haven't mentioned this, but I make the best stuffed French toast of all time. And literally, when we've been joking about this, I've been thinking about, like, what can I offer the defense team? Like, what can I offer? Like squirreliness? Okay, fine. Do they want to learn Russian? Probably not. Violin? Probably, but like, I will say, like, I'll do their proofreading, but I'll make them a killer fucking breakfast as well. Right. That's right. You're going to ask her. Great. Perfect. ABC's doc is going to join in. Excellent. We need all the help we can get because there's a lot of mistakes, and some of these documents have more mistakes than others. But anyway, yeah, good. You better let her know. Something tells me that just from giving her what I can, this is just my impression. I feel like she would just be so tickled at the idea of a squanguen existing. Like, I feel like she would like, how she's like always smiling. I don't know. I just feel like she'd be like, oh my God, that's so magical. I don't know. Anyway. Okay. Right. The authors rejected the term touch DNA as misleading, as such a term infers that the DNA recovered from a surface got there via the surface being touched. This is usually not known. This review was followed by a similar review article by a different group of scientists 6 years later to reach similar conclusions. Okay. However, those requested to provide expert opinion on DNA-related activity level issues are often insufficiently trained to do so. We advocate recognition of DNA activity associated expertise to be distinct from the expertise associated with the identification of individuals. Yeah, that makes sense. By the way, they had a really good in Casey Anthony trial a couple episodes ago. There was a really good expert for the defense team on touch DNA from the Netherlands, and we learned a lot from him as well, because the Netherlands is like the leader of DNA. They were like decades ahead of the US. So okay. Oh, dude, look at this. Speaking of a Danish name, is that the right word? That's definitely, this individual certainly hails from the Netherlands. I'll say that much. There you go, right there, guys, right? Like I said. Oh dear. Okay. The term, quote, activity level, end quote, refers to the question of the when and how of what happened. Another typo here. Look at this. We got the one type of apostrophe, and then we've got like a quotation mark. It just bothers me, it just bothers me. Like, this is, if you were in school and you made mistakes like that, they'd be marking points off with each type of, with each one, right? Even just from the things I've pointed out so far, I feel like it would be like an F, you know what I mean? Even if the content was good. Anyway, whatever. Keep reading. Ugh. The when and how of what happened, oh my God, don't keep reading because you're going to lose your mind. Such as how. They left out the word as. Such as how did the DNA come to be on it's distracting, among other things. It's problematic for a lot of reasons, but for my purposes, it's at the very least distracting. But sometimes you can't really understand what they're saying, because sometimes the word you can be like, it has to be this word, but sometimes the word left out by accident could be important and you don't know what it is. And it's just, why would you ever want to leave it there? Why would you want there to be any guesswork? But not only that, anyway, I'm not going to go on a soapbox about this. Okay. Such as how did the DNA come to be on an object and how long had it been there? Footnote 6. All right, here's a footnote. Okay, it's just saying where it came from. It's just citing the journal. Okay. Where was that? Footnote 6. Okay. Examples of indirect transfer of what might be characterized as touch or contact DNA are numerous and summarized in the 2 review articles described above. Now I have to try to, okay, we're going to say Van O. Van O et al. Discussed the use of the term touch DNA as one that can be misleading as it implies a specific mode of action and to some degree also a type of biological source. Yeah. Again, the dude who testified in the Casey Anthony trial echoed this as well. Unless using a less descriptive term such as trace DNA, and I think he called it trace DNA actually, is what I recall. I think he called himself a trace DNA expert, is a more appropriate term to be used in casework. Yep, when the source and mode of deposition are unknown. The article is an illustration of how extremely complex the question of how and when is given the identification of a sample that has no biological source such as blood. And then we have another footnote. Okay, it's just citing articles. Okay. And then summarized in the illustration below. I believe we had a similar exhibit actually in the Casey Anthony trial here. Yeah, it wasn't this exact one, but it was similar. It was similar. I love this though. So you can see primary transfer there, indirect, so secondary transfer, and then indirect deposition, so multi-step. Look at that. And then simultaneous direct and indirect. So like hand to hand, and then bidirectional. Wow. Multiple contacts. Whoa. Interrupted pathway. Oh dear. Oh dear me. Interrupted pathway with recollection. DNA parking. Oh my God. DNA parking. I doubt it. But also, for paralegals though, I mean, they wouldn't actually write this, and anything that is done by a paralegal, if they are drafting any documents, they are always, it's required by the bar. They have to be reviewed by their attorney, whoever it is that's in charge of them, usually by more than one. It's never just submitted. So somebody should have caught this is the thing. Twiz is going to park some DNA. Excellent. Right. It does appear that way, that it would be very much mixed. Yes. And then they can call it a single source after they unmix it. Right. I think that is what goes on. I think you guys are right. Despite this wealth of information in scientific study, the authors conclude that more work is necessary and that the expertise to offer activity level opinions. The how and when is beyond the expertise of crime lab analysts. Then in 2024, the NIST published a document entitled Forensic DNA Interpretation and Human Factors, Improving Practice Through a Systems Approach. And there's a website there, footnote 8. The document was the result of extensive work and years of public review and comment. The expert working group on human factors and forensic DNA interpretation began work in 2020 with the goal of recommending strategies for improving the production, evaluation, and communication of DNA results. The EWG consisted of experts in the field of forensic DNA and was subject to repeated rounds of public comment from the greater forensic community. Most notably for this work, the EWG addressed the question of transferring the ability of experts to proffer opinions. The EWG addressed the following question. But a further important question is what activities led to the presence of that DNA? With the increased sensitivity of DNA techniques and sophisticated software, a DNA profile may be developed even when the contributor of that DNA never touched the item or area that was swabbed. Right. Alternatively, a person's DNA may be present when they were not involved in the crime. Well, that right there is why this matters, right? Fucking hell. Therefore, considering how or when the DNA may have been deposited or why it was not recovered can be vital. Yeah, I would say so. And that is why right now, right there, right here, right now, whatever that is, ask Sherwin-Williams, maybe. This right here, Judge Hippler and his question, will the DNA be enough? Will the DNA be enough? We've all talked about this, right? I'll tell you what, this one little thing right here, if the jury understands this, that can completely change that question, right? Because what is the significance of this, right? The how or when the DNA may have been deposited and not just why it was recovered, right? Or why it was not recovered. So for example, that is why you should need other evidence, right? Not just the DNA when you're dealing with touch DNA, right? I mean, especially I would say when it's only on one thing, right? Normally, in other cases, there is other evidence to where, I mean, take the Zachary Hughes case just as a recent example, right? Like when you compare, if you were trying to compare in terms of the video footage, right, of the white Elantra, right, versus the suspect in that video footage, right? There's a lot of differences there. And there's the differences because they had like the license plate. They had the license plate of the vehicle, okay? They knew they could see that was registered to him. They had a picture of the bike in the truck. In other words, they connected. There was a lot. This case is unusual. Let me just start there. Okay. But just to compare it again, like that was, so even before in the Zachary Hughes case, even before he admitted to the crime when he took the stand, right, with his affirmative defense, even before that, right, just during the state's case in chief, they had a lot more. Now they presented it so poorly that, and it was such a complex case that I think a lot of us, myself included, thought that potentially had the defense just rested, there could have been an acquittal there. But that was not really due to the evidence. It was really more due to the way it was presented, because the prosecution, no offense, but they were not good. And it was very confusing, and they did not make it easy. But what I'm saying is, like, they had the DNA there, but they had a lot more to corroborate it. And there's plenty of cases where that's the case, right? Where there's DNA, but it's like without the DNA, the case was still really strong and maybe still could have even resulted in a conviction, even without the DNA. So anyway, I feel like it's pretty unusual when you only have this. Like, I can't think of a case where I saw something go to trial that had this such like lack of evidence. I mean, maybe comparable to like a Karen Reed or like a Richard Allen situation, I mean, they're all different, but they do have some similarities. But anyway, I'm just saying it's bizarre to me. So, yeah. Okay. But let me just read this again, because this is really important. With the increased sensitivity of DNA techniques and sophisticated software, a DNA profile may be developed even when the contributor of that DNA never touched the item or that area was swabbed. Alternatively, a person's DNA may be present when they were not involved in the crime. Therefore, considering how or when the DNA may have been deposited can be vital. All right. Except in ground truth known experiments where an individual is observed to have been in contact with a surface location, it is not possible to know whether the transfer was direct or indirect. Right. The assessment of what is called TPPR, transfer, persistence, prevalence, and recovery, is a separate skill distinct from standard DNA profiling and interpretation. There are not adequate educational opportunities to inform these types of issues within the United States. The EWG concluded that an expert rarely, if ever, has all the information needed to perform a robust, balanced, and transparent evaluation of biological results regarding transfer or specific activities on the witness stand. The EWG offered proposed responses to questions of how and when DNA arrived on an object, none of which include a statement of how. This is very interesting right here. Wow, look at this. So, okay, proposed responses to questions about how or when the DNA was deposited. All right. So here's for the first example question. In your opinion, is direct transfer more likely than indirect? Proposed ways for the expert to respond. DNA analysis does not allow a scientist to directly answer how the DNA was deposited, direct or indirect transfer. The DNA results presented in my report regard the comparison of DNA profiles and can only help answer the questions about whose DNA may be present or not. My testimony about the value of the DNA comparison is only meaningful to help the jury determine who the source of the DNA was. The testimony does not provide any information that addresses the issues of how or when. Could this alleged activity have happened? Offering an opinion on this question would amount to speculating on what is alleged. It is not my role as a scientist to speculate about or determine what happened. Is it possible that the DNA was deposited when the person of interest engaged in activity at the scene prior to the alleged event? It is not my role to discuss the possibility of the alleged event or any other event. My expertise, this is great. I love this. This is what they should be. This is good. This is good. They're not going to go there. And we've seen this. I'm sure all of us have seen this before with different experts in different cases, even regardless of the field, right? Like a good expert will not get out over their skis, as they say in Murdoch land, right? Don't get out over your skis. Kenny Kinsey, great example. He's not going to offer an opinion that he doesn't feel qualified to give, or that, anyway, anything, agreeing that something, and it just to that end, I'll just say any expert that's really credible is more than willing and is to say where they can't opine. And if it's ever even remotely on the fence, even if they maybe are qualified, they're going to be more likely to be on the conservative side than opine on something that makes them, it's like an ethical thing, right? Because sometimes only they might really know where the boundaries are in terms of a certain question that's being asked versus the attorneys. Anyway, okay. Agreeing that something is possible is not the same as offering an opinion about the probability of the results in the context of case-specific circumstances. Discussing whether something is possible does not help me convey the significance of the results in the context of this case. For example, getting struck by lightning or flipping a coin and getting heads are both possible at very different probabilities. I like that analogy. Are there other explanations for the presence or absence of DNA? It would be inappropriate and speculative for me to discuss why the DNA was or was not detected. Answering this question would not allow me to convey a balanced assessment of the findings in the context of this case. The only way I can evaluate the results is by considering at least two opposing views. That seems like, I don't know, I don't like that one as much. It doesn't really seem to fit. Anyway, okay. The only conclusion this court can draw is that the opinions regarding the means and manner in which DNA was deposited on an item is not considered a proper topic of expert opinion for a DNA analyst and likely to lead to undue prejudice to Mr. Kohberger and would render his trial fundamentally unfair. Then we have B, this court must exclude the opinion of Riley Nolan. As set forth above, an expert cannot offer opinions within their expertise. The expertise of the typical lab analyst is not sufficient to allow them to be considered an expert in the area of the mechanism of DNA transfer. Nolan's disclosure concedes as much as she acknowledges that current methods cannot conclusively offer an answer to the question of how, when, and how. They should get that dude that was testified at Casey Anthony's trial, the dude from the Netherlands, although I'm sure they've already got some baller people lined up. But anyway, Nolan cannot be allowed to substitute her judgment in the face of the weight of the forensic community's agreement that the science and literature does not support any analyst testifying about the when and how of transfer. This opinion falls outside the norm for forensic DNA experts and would be highly speculative. Yeah, clearly. Given the nature of the opinion proffered and the recommendations in the NIST Human Factors Report, this opinion would be highly speculative. Right. We know. Okay. This is disclosed. Oh my God, another typo. Delete the word as. This disclosure is not proper rebuttal testimony. Nolan's disclosure contains an opinion that is not rebuttal, but appears to be the state's theory of the case, that the DNA from Mr. Kohberger arrived on the knife sheath via direct contact. A close reading of the disclosure from Mr. Kohberger's DNA witness, Ruth Ballard, does not contain any opinion regarding the how and when the DNA arrived on the sheath. This testimony should be excluded. Ruth Ballard. Well, we know we have to see who she is. There she is, guys. Ruth Ballard. That's going to be their expert, the state's expert. Oh boy. I'm a human geneticist specializing in forensic serology and DNA. For 25 years, I taught academic and research courses in forensic biology at California State University, Sacramento. Right? Yeah. So there's something. I mean, I don't blame you. That's all. Okay. I recently retired from teaching and research, but remain very active as a forensic DNA consultant, primarily providing expertise and advice to public defenders. I've issued reports and or testified in over 200 criminal cases. First off, this is weird, and here's why. I will just say this much. It is the standard practice for a bio, and trust me, as a musician, you have to write a fuck ton of these. It should be done in the third person voice. This is odd. Like, that's part of what's odd. This should say, Dr. Ballard is a human geneticist specializing in forensic serology and DNA. For 25 years, she taught academic. Do you see what I mean? This is weird that it's all in first person voice. Just saying. This is odd. Very, very, very odd. This is like, what? Odd. Very weird. I don't know that I've ever seen this done, really. Now, when you're testifying, it's different. You have to say what you did, but in a bio, this is odd as fuck. Oh my God, you guys. In addition to my activities as a forensic scientist, I am the author of 3 science fantasy novels for middle grade children. You guys, we need to get these books. Frankie and the Gift of Fantasy, Tales by Moon's Light, Stories from Before the Great Melt, and Elvia and the Gift of Passion. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Her next book is called Bubba and the Gift of Reason. Is this Bubba? Is this Bubba from Murdoch? Probably not, but that would be. This is interesting. She continues on. My writing is for children ages 9 to 12, but my creative ventures don't stop there. This is weird. I am also a folk artist. Like, it's not weird that, like, it's great that she has other things. It's weird, especially because it's in the first person voice. It's just freaking me out. I'm also a folk artist whose unique, colorful cartoons aim to delight and inspire. Now there's a link here. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. She included a link. Oh my God. I'm dying. I'm dying. I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm dead. So she's essentially included, this is crazy. Like, it's like self-promotion. Like, the link was there. I just clicked on it. Dr. Ruthy Ballard, author, artist, scientist. Scientist is last, by the way. And there's her picture. Isn't she wearing the same shirt? This is wild. Teachers? Oh my God. Is this her on YouTube? Oh my God, you guys. Hold on. Hold on.
Teachers, parents, and librarians of middle grade kids, this
Oh my God. We have to watch this. It's only 3 minutes.
short video is for you. I'm Dr. Ruthy Ballard, and I'm a scientist and children's book author who's passionate about building scientific literacy in today's
You can
kids.
see my face, guys.
But I'm also a folk artist, and much of my work paints messages for children. Just like my books, many of my pieces are rich in science,
Oh my God.
but easily accessible and relatable. I welcome you into my colorful world.
Wait.
And hope you find
What the fuck was that? Was there a glitch there? Hold on. What?
accessible and relatable. I welcome you into my
That's weird.
colorful
That's
world
weird.
and hope you find tools here for teaching and engaging the young people in your life. They're all free. I hope too that you'll get an idea of
looking at
how
the
I
camera
engage with kids
accurately.
when I do my school visits.
This is weird.
It's not just about my science fantasy novels,
Oh my
it's a whole lot more. Consider the terrible twos. This piece is about the power of the exponential function
Oh my
and
God.
the dangers in failing to understand and appreciate it. Population growth and carbon dioxide emissions over time are the examples in the graph, and we can see that both are in the J curve of growth now due to the awesome power of doubling. This cartoon is a great way to talk with kids about why exponential growth can be so dangerous, and of course the math behind it.
I find that
This
picture
cartoon
to be creepy. What about you guys?
can also suggest that children are the ones who will suffer from the excesses of their elders, and how turning a blind eye has led us into
terrible. Why
a
would you
treacherous
do that?
situation
Oh my God.
with no easy solution, where the burden to solve the problem, unfortunately, will mostly fall on them. But
Wow.
we're not necessarily doomed. Why It Ain't Over Yet is a hopeful cartoon that points out how far we've come and how our ingenuity has brought our species to
Look at that picture. That picture looks like doom to me. What the fuck? How is that supposed to be hopeful? That's even worse than the previous one. Oh my God.
incredible feats.
Hi, Kane.
Consider our recent flyby of Ultima Thule, 4 billion miles away, and we sent a spaceship there, and with incredible accuracy. Who could have dreamed even 50 years ago that such a thing was out there and could be possible? This cartoon gives you a chance to talk to kids about space travel and discuss the awesome distances involved. I think it's
like, I could think of a million other examples of cartoons that are better than that to get kids in. Like, what? What? I mean, pick any cartoon, really. Like, what, 80% maybe of kids' cartoons these days have to do with space? They already know about space. This is dumb.
It's crucially important that kids know something about the universe they're in and their place in it. It gives them perspective and motivation to care for the small blue dot in the vastness of space where we all live.
Oh my God, I'm going to lose my mind.
More hope is in the third and final cartoon I'll share with you today, if we make it.
Last one.
This suggests that not only can we solve the global problems our species has created, but that we can go beyond that and tackle issues that seem out of reach now. Here, 2 apparently young women are celebrating a birthday, and one of them is 200 years old.
Huh?
Can you envision a day when science will have tackled aging?
That
So
looks
people will live
like that actress, guys. The one on the right. I guess, but they both look okay. Let's just see who do we think these people are? They both look vaguely familiar as to people like on TV maybe or something. It's gonna drive me crazy. Y'all let me know.
live longer and healthier lives, it may not be that far off. Maybe one of the kids in
The
your
artwork is not that great though, right? Like,
life will live to be 200.
you should stick to
In any event, I like to couple doomsday messages like the terrible twos, which are vitally
Oh my God, what is happening? What literally is happening?
important so kids appreciate the gravity of what's happening
Doomsday
with
messages?
upbeat messages that keep them inspired
Okay.
and focused on what wonders can lie ahead.
If I were the defense team, all right, I'd be like, I would make sure I have a copy of each of her little books, and I would like, I don't know, I feel like just given what we know so far, I feel like they're maybe pretty easy to start chipping away at her credibility for a jury. What do you guys think?
If they stay the course. That's it for today. Some
Good.
food for thought.
Ew.
Thanks for listening, and thanks for everything you do for our kids. I hope my work can help you in your
It will not.
ongoing mission.
Nope, never. Oh boy. Oh, okay, let's just see. Is it the same Bubba as Murdoch? Nope, I guess not. That's too bad. I will say, I like the cover of the book. I do like the cover of the book, but you guys can probably tell it's a similar font to fonts that I use a lot. Actually, all that font is similar to the fonts that I use, and so are the kind of the colors. That looks kind of like something I would make for one of my thumbnails or whatever. But anyway, so I do like the book cover. News. Oh my God, there's an interview about this book. We could go way deep into this because she's got a lot of what do you call it? Like, there's a lot out here, like literally. She wants people to know who she is. She wants people to know she's called Ruthy. She really wants to be called Ruthy. One could really deep dive into all this. Like, there's a lot here. Wow. I mean, everything's got more links to it. The reason I clicked on this though is to see if she was advertising that she's going to be testifying in this trial, because that would be a problem. As we know, when they do that, they should not do that, because then it can diminish their credibility. I don't even know. Like, we could do like a whole live stream, just like delving into all of this. Like, this is insane. This is all from just the previous thing, which, I mean, how did we get here? I don't even know anymore. I mean, my God, how did we do it? We did it this way. Okay. We clicked on, dude. The fact that the bio is in first person blows my mind. Forensic consulting. Okay. Woof. Oh, A minor. That's funny. That's a funny joke. That's a funny joke. Shout out to all the music peeps out there, by the way. D minor is far superior. Look at this dumbass dude. It's interesting because she's got a very different disposition than a lot, you guys who've watched a lot of trials, we know what we usually get with these DNA scientists, and she's very different than most. Not that there's anything wrong with being different, but it's like, it's interesting. I would not, if I just like met her in normal life, I would not guess she was a DNA scientist at all. Like, it's interesting. Huh. So she's saying she's got an unbiased set of eyes, essentially. Well, she doesn't say that. She says, if your case involves DNA, it's useful to get a fresh, unbiased set of eyes. I guess she's suggesting herself. The bench notes and raw data files that underlie the conclusions in a crime lab report may contain details important for building an effective defense. So it's interesting because the first thing we read about it on here, it sounds like she usually does defense work. So, and it sounds like she usually works with public defenders. So, oh my God, it's just a bit much though. Like, we don't need it. Her face doesn't matter. Like, we don't need her face. My core philosophy is that it's better to risk saving a guilty person than to condemn an innocent one. Interesting. Nothing upsets me more than hearing the stories of innocent people who, after spending decades in prison, are exonerated of crimes they didn't commit. My professional passion is preventing this kind of injustice from happening in the future. If the DNA evidence in a case is weak, I will expose that fact. Interesting. If the DNA evidence is strong, I'll explain why in clear language that's easy to understand, like you do for the middle schoolers. Either way, once you hire/retain me, I'll commit myself fully to your case. I work tirelessly on behalf of my clients and make sure they're fully prepared for their day in court. Here's from David Kelvin, a defense attorney. Dr. Ballard's help was invaluable. My client was exonerated, and I attribute it solely to Dr. Ballard. Interesting. So I'm sure you guys can imagine why the state hired her, right? Because that's going to make them look good. When they ask her, how many times have you testified? And you usually testify for the defense or the prosecution. And it sounds like she's going to be saying usually the defense. I mean, that's what this sounds like to me. I've been consulted more than 200 cases. Interesting, though. I mean, because she said, like, if it's weak, I'll expose it. We'll see. There's her curriculum vitae. I'm not going to. We could, again, if you guys, we could do a whole live stream deep diving her. If you guys want that, let me know. It could be a members only thing. Doesn't have to be. Just let me know. She's got so much shit here that this could be a whole thing. So we're going to go back to where we were, which was here. So now we know who she is. I think we have a pretty good idea. All right. A close reading of the disclosure for Mr. Kohberger's DNA witness, Dr. Ruth Ballard, does not contain any opinion regarding the how and when the DNA arrived on the sheath. This testimony should be excluded. This court must exclude the use of the terms touch or contact DNA, footnote 9. Did they say who their DNA expert is yet, though? I remember they mentioned their Amazon. It might be in here at some point. Okay, footnote 9. This prohibition should apply to both the questioner and the witness in the use of this term in opening statements. While this motion is focused on Ms. Nolan, the generic statements in the disclosure for DNA witnesses raise the same concerns, and this motion should be applied to all witnesses who testify about DNA. Okay. That was footnote 9. Under Idaho Rule Evidence 403, this court may exclude the use of the terms touch or contact DNA if its probative value is substantially outweighed by danger of one or more of the following: unfair prejudice, confusing the issues, misleading the jury, undue delay, wasting time. Yeah, we know. Okay, this rule requires the court to balance. We've talked about this extensively. Here, the terms touch and contact are misleading. So they're showing how this is meeting or warranting, if anything, like a 403 analysis, if it isn't outright just excluded. Touch and contact are misleading, and the forensic community has determined through empirical research that it is not possible for a DNA expert to testify as to how DNA was deposited on an item. The two terms insinuate that the deposit must have come from direct contact with an object rather than the myriad other possible means of transfer documented in the literature. In the literature, I'm a Dracula. I don't even know. Wow. Was not expecting Ruthy. Furthermore, allowing testimony regarding the manner in which the DNA was deposited on the sheath would implicate the same concerns than the use of the terms touch and contact invoke. The forensic community consensus in an extensive body of research shows the how and when opinions in DNA testing far exceed the expertise of a DNA analyst and are not founded in science. In this case, the only DNA evidence that implicates Mr. Kohberger is the DNA found on the sheath in the residence. DNA found on the sheath found in the residence. Okay. From the lab reports and notes, as well as recent testimony by Riley Nolan, it appears that sample Q1 was a swabbing of the leather strap on the sheath, as well as the interior of the snap, not the outer snap surface, which apparently was not sampled, in order to preserve the surface for fingerprinting. No serological testing was done on the area swab for Q11 to identify any biological material. That's what's wild to me. I can't wrap my head around that one. Ruthy, what are you going to say about that? An area identified as Q14, swabs of the stains on the back of the sheath tested presumptively positive for blood and was DNA tested. Okay. So they did test some of it, okay, on the back. Mr. Kohberger was excluded from this particular sample, which was, okay, there's the mixture of blood. There we go. We were just talking about this. It's got to be the victims. I mean, it makes sense, right? It only makes sense that the blood would be from the victims, right? Thus, the government has the burden to prove. It's just weird, though, because they kept saying that the sheath wasn't fucking tested for blood. Like, why? Hold on. I can't let that go. I have to go back because that's going to drive me crazy. Hold on. Because I freaked out about this. Y'all were there. Some of you guys, anyway. Okay, they're saying Q11 specifically. Okay. So Q11 is not referencing the entire sheath. It's only that one portion of the sheath. That's what it is. So I want to make that clear for the record, and it'll be clear. I'll timestamp the fuck out of it, right? Q11 is not the entire sheath. Q11 is one swab of the sheath, okay? That particular swab was never subjected to standard biological testing for the presence of blood or saliva. Okay. So that's the distinction. And then I'm glad I went back and double checked because I don't ever want anybody to be confused, including myself. An area identified as Q14. Okay. Got it. Swabs of the stains of the back of the sheath. Okay. So that makes me feel a little bit better because at first I was like, you've got to be kidding me. They did not test anything. They didn't test the rest of the sheath for blood. That's not true. They did. It was okay. Tested presumptively positive for blood and was DNA tested. Okay. Well, that's good. He was excluded. Okay, fine. It's not as bad as I thought with that then. That's good. Thus, the government has the burden to prove the when and how the DNA was identified in Q11. Stingrays are a type of, Twiz, I'm sure you know what the stingray is. I'm sure you know what that is. They're like, oh my God, what is it called? We talked about these on one of the live streams. They're one of the ways that you trick the phone into pinging. Oh my God, I'm blanking on the term right now. My brain is all, Ruthy destroyed my brain temporarily. I'm sure it'll come back. Oh, you're not asking what it is. Okay. Right. Thank you. That's right. Self-isolation. Right. I think Stingray is a brand. I'm pretty sure I read about that in one of the things when I was researching. Okay. Allowing the use of these two terms would mislead the jury to believe that there was evidence to support the conclusion of direct contact when in fact there's no direct evidence. The admission of these terms would lead to a substantial waste of time in that it would require not only extensive cross-examination of the government's witnesses on the topic, but also rebuttal testimony from defense experts on this question. Furthermore, the use of this language would unfairly prejudice Mr. Kohberger. Unfair prejudice, we know what that is. If language is used, the jury might well believe through expert testimony, as opposed to factual testimony, that Mr. Kohberger left his DNA on the sheath via direct contact. A fact the government must prove. Yeah, they're totally right. Absolutely. They must fucking prove it. As a consequence, there's a danger that the jury would reach a decision on an improper basis due to evidence as unfairly prejudicial. Okay, cool. There we go. All right. Next. Do-do-doom, boom, boom. Another one bites the dust. Do-do-doom, boom, boom. Another one bites the dust, and another one, boom, boom. Another one bites the dust. Ba-da-da-doom, do-do-do. Sorry, I don't have all the words memorized. I'm trying to scroll and zoom in while clapping with my other hand, and it's okay. The biggest mistake was I was trying to use my left hand. I'm not left-handed. Okay, we're on to this one. See, you guys didn't even know I was doing it because I didn't even share the tab. I was getting this set up as I was trying to do the song. Anyway, all right, we're on to the next one. Number 13. You might say, why? 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 This is going to segue us into autism. All right. Conditions as aggravator. So we got another defense motion here. Now, this also is about the autism. All right. Comes now, Bryan C. Kohberger. An order preventing the state from using Mr. Kohberger's mental health diagnosis, I almost said diagnosis, that's not a word, diagnosis of autism and the characteristics of his autism as evidence in its case. This motion is meant to protect Mr. Kohberger's rights under the Constitution. Okay. Mr. Kohberger has a diagnosis of autism and he displays characteristics consistent with autism. A comprehensive neuropsychological evaluation of Mr. Kohberger conducted by Dr. Rachel Orr, all those letters, found that Mr. Kohberger continues to exhibit all the core diagnostic features of ASD currently with significant impact on his daily life. And there's a footnote 1. Okay, they have an expert report, exhibit 1. I'm sure we can't see the exhibit, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Anyway, okay. Mr. Kohberger shares characteristics such as social challenges, preservation, and lack of reciprocity. Oh, sorry, not preservation. I was like, what? Sorry. Perseveration. It's like persevering, I guess. Lack of reciprocity is interesting. A person consistently gives more than they receive in a relationship. I don't Huh. I mean, y'all have heard me say I've had many students and who are on the spectrum in various ways, right? And I've known of I'm just saying I did not know that this was an attribute of people that I've not heard of this as something that could be, I don't know, let me know, guys. Is this something that you have heard of, like lack of reciprocity being a thing for people that are autistic? I mean, I'm not, obviously it could happen. It's just, I have not heard of that being like one of the characteristics that you usually hear of. Like social challenges, sure, yeah. But that's interesting. These characteristics are noted by those unfamiliar with autism as not picking up on social cues. Okay, yeah. The lack of reciprocity is still interesting though. In evaluating Mr. Kohberger, Dr. Orr found that he's displayed lifelong deficits in social emotional reciprocity. Okay, maybe they're going to explain it, including limited perspective taking and limited sharing of affects, emotions of others. See, but that though is more normal, right, for autism. The lack of reciprocity, though, is like the opposite, right? Like what I just read, lack of reciprocity is like giving more than you receive. It's like being more emotionally available than the other person. So I don't understand how that fits in. Seems like the contradicts it. Because of his autism, others may not see, or sorry, because of his autism, others may see Bryan as not recognizing social cues, continuing to talk to others when the conversation would naturally end, over focusing on a topic or hobby of interest, or talking about the same topic repeatedly, using a complicated vocabulary, or seeming self-absorbed. Bryan's autism is also accompanied by obsessive compulsiveness and an eating disorder. Oh, that's sad. Since childhood, Mr. Kohberger has exhibited compulsions around getting things in his eyes, hand washing, and other germ-avoidant behaviors. These characteristics must not be used by the prosecution as factors for the jury to consider as aggravators. Evidence of mental illness in capital case litigation is mitigation evidence. The United States Supreme Court and the Idaho, so remember, because they don't have a NGI defense, Idaho, right? And in fact, the dude who was responsible for making that decision, like where I guess it used to be a defense, and then he like codified it to where it was no longer allowed, and this was decades ago. That dude comes on Vinnie Politan regularly. He's, an Idaho, like he was like the attorney general or whatever, and he's like, yeah, that was my decision just recently. We actually watched that episode the other night, I think. So anyway, but he got rid of it as an NGI defense, right? So anyway, the point being that mitigation, right, in a death penalty case. So United States Supreme Court and the Idaho Supreme Court recognize evidence of a defendant's mental illness as mitigating. So right, so while it cannot be an affirmative defense to be used during the guilt phase, right, during the mitigation phase, it can be used. Holding that mental health evidence is relevant to mitigation, even where there is no nexus between the defendant's mental health and the crimes. Okay, there we go. So defendants who commit criminal acts that are attributable to a disadvantaged background or to emotional and mental problems may be less culpable than defendants who have no such excuse. Mr. Kohberger's autism is mitigation evidence, footnote 2. So basically, they're saying a couple things here, right? It's mitigation evidence. So they're saying they don't want the state to bring this motion in limine is so that the state cannot use this during the guilt phase to try to use it as indicative or in support of his guilt, right? They're saying it's mitigation, so it should be used only if he's convicted, right, as mitigation. Okay. And then footnote 2, in expert disclosures, Mr. Kohberger indicated that he expects to call 2 expert witnesses in his case in chief to combat any attempt by the state to use his ASD characteristics as evidence of intent or proof of other elements of the crimes for which he's accused. That's interesting. How the fuck would they even do that, though? I can't even, if we try to get creative, how the fuck would they do that? They would use the ASD as evidence of intent or proof of the elements of the crimes. Huh. Yeah, I mean, the crimes don't match with autism, right? So I don't know how the state would even do that. Anyway, this motion is not meant to conflict with that method of confronting evidence, that method of confronting evidence the state may use against him in its case in chief. This motion is not meant to conflict with that method. Okay. I see. So what they're saying, okay, what they're saying is because they have 2 expert witnesses that they expect to call during their case in chief, that would be to combat any attempt that the state uses during their case in chief, right? The point being, they'd rather them not use it at all, but that they've got experts, I guess, at the ready in case this is denied, I suppose. Interesting. Right. The thing though is like it's not. I mean, I understand how. See, I'm just so by the book, right? I understand how they will, in closing arguments, try to make that case to a jury about the cold-blooded. They didn't show emotion, But the reason I brought it up is because right here it says evidence of intent or proof of elements of the crimes, and like showing emotion, right, is not an element of any crime. Like, or not showing emotion, rather. That's not an element of any crime, right? That's just bullshit that they can try to use, right, in closing arguments. But like literally the elements of the crimes, like, you know what I mean? That's not a part of it. The closest thing would be malice aforethought, which is going to be defined differently by every state based on their own case law. And not even every state uses malice as part of an element for murder. I don't think, actually. So, and of course it depends on the degree of murder, but even malice aforethought, right? It's like, that's like intent. But like what is not a part, the thing that's not an element of any of these crimes or any crime is like, what was their face looking like? You know what I mean? To where it's like, look at his face, he's a cold-blooded killer. It's like, that is not, that's just bullshit, right? So that's why I thought it was interesting, because they specifically referenced it for proving the elements of crimes. So, but I'm sure you're right. I'm sure you're right, Twiz. I have no doubt that that's correct. I'm sure they'll do that, right? Okay, so that was footnote 2. Where was that from? Where'd you come from? Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Footnote 2. Okay. It is inappropriate for the prosecution to wrap mitigating evidence into an aggravator. In Roper v. Simmons, the Supreme Court noted with disapproval that the prosecutor had argued that mitigating evidence of the defendant's youth should actually be considered as an aggravator. The court suggested that a rule prohibiting such conduct would have been warranted if not for the court's larger concerns requiring that death be excluded altogether. I'm not going to go and read. So he was a youth, apparently. Okay. Allowing the state to argue that Mr. Kohberger's mental illness is an aggravating factor that violates the 8th and 14th Amendments by precluding the jury from giving meaningful consideration in effect to that meaningful evidence. Mr. Kohberger points the court to this case for an overview of the court's jurisprudence. Individualized sentencing in capital cases reflects the concern of the court for fairness in proceedings. As such, Idaho is required to provide for unhindered consideration of mitigating evidence. Yeah, as they should. As they should. And there's some North Carolina case law. Sweet. Holding that an instruction. Okay, wait. We have to look at this. North Carolina case law for the win. So this is case law that went all the way up to the Supreme Court from 1976. Okay, what did it hold? Holding that an instruction precluding consideration of non-statutory mitigating circumstances is unconstitutional. Woo! Shout out to North Carolina. Sweet. Maintaining that one constitutional shortcoming of the North Carolina statute was its failure to allow consideration of relevant aspects of the defendant's character. Sweet. Way to go. By the way, I believe, I didn't look into it, but I think that South Carolina, I know they were slated to, I don't know if it happened, but South Carolina was supposed to be executing somebody, I guess, yesterday with the firing squad. I don't know if it happened or not, but I think it might be like the first person in a long time. I'm sure if somebody Googles it, you'll see, and it'll say, I'm pretty sure it's like the first person maybe ever. I have such a hard time. I couldn't follow up with that, but I think it probably happened. And I just, in this case, I've covered every death penalty motion in their entirety. And I'll tell you what, in doing so, you learn a lot about the firing squad. And even if it seems problematic anyway, for myriad reasons, or just the death penalty in general, I'll tell you what, like, it was harrowing to read through some of that. in regards to the firing squad. So, okay. The court has defined mitigating factors to be evidence that might serve as a basis for a sentence less than death. Mitigating circumstances are not necessarily factors that lead sentencers to believe that a defendant is a, quote, good, end quote, person despite having committed a horrible crime. As the Supreme Court has explained, it did happen. Okay, that's unfortunate. And I can't, yeah. As the Supreme Court has explained, compassionate or mitigating factors may stem from the diverse frailties of humankind. In a constitutional, so that's again Woodson, that's the North Carolina case. In a constitutionally fair proceeding, juries may be able to consider mitigation as mitigation. Seems redundant. Okay. Considering again, cheap, what's cheap, Twiz? Okay, we don't need to read through all this. And a lot of this was actually also included, I believe, in the death penalty motions I was just referencing as well. Allowing the state to argue that Mr. Kohberger's mental health issues are actually aggravators unlawfully interferes with the jury's ability to give effect to that mitigation evidence. It is more prejudicial than if the sentencer were to ignore it or to give it no weight, which is prohibited by law. Guillotines? Are you saying like the old school way? The state also cannot argue the factors which are causally related to the Mr. Kohberger's mental health issues should serve to aggravate the punishment, that they contribute to further dangerousness, propensity to kill, or contribute. Yeah, right. And all that, all those aggravators, right. That is functionally the same thing as arguing he should be sentenced to death because of his mental illness. Right. That makes sense. We've talked, that came up also in one of the other death penalty motions we covered a while back whenever those were filed. Miller. Yep, we talked about this. But it was interesting because Jay Logston wrote those, and it was like this whole thing of like evidence, for example, like mental illness being used as both an aggravator and a mitigator. And I was like, yeah, that's interesting as fuck, isn't it? So, okay, I think that's probably the gist of this one. Yep. Okay, so now this is a quickie here. That's what she said. So this defendant's motion for leave to file additional motions challenging the death penalty. So I just wanted to pull this up because motions plural, right? So we have two. We have one that we're going to cover today and one we're going to cover tomorrow. The one we're going to cover today is motion to strike the death penalty for the autism spectrum disorder. The one tomorrow is the big one. And it's like got some overlap with Lori Vallow, which is like the big one of like, they should be precluded. It's not even motion to strike. It's like precluding the state from seeking the death penalty. And it's going to cite all the different shit that the state has done, basically. That's the big one. So we'll be doing that tomorrow. So that's why I wanted to show this so that everyone knows that like there's two death penalty motions, right? This one that we're just about to cover now, and then there's an additional one, but it's, you wouldn't necessarily know it because it doesn't say motion to strike the death penalty in the caption. So, okay. So here we go. Now this one's 28 pages. Doesn't surprise me though, because these death penalty motions tend to be lengthy. You crazy, Twiz. You crazy. Oh, he chose it. That's interesting. He chose it. Okay. Well, in that case, that's different. He chose it. Okay. Thank you for telling me that, because that makes me feel better. If he chose it, I don't know why he would choose it. Doesn't even matter. He chose it. Okay. There we go. Because you said Vallow, Hart. Unless you mean Vallow as in Charles, the victim. Maybe that's what you meant. Thank you. And actually, see, now that you mention it, I do recall hearing that there was somebody who wanted to choose it. This was months and months and months ago before. Anyway, I think that's accurate because I remember seeing something about that. And it might have even been referenced actually in one of these filings, the one that talked about the firing squad. It might have been referenced there. And I think they might have said something like, if somebody chooses it, it's different. I agree. If somebody chooses it, it's different. But yeah, Vallow Hart is why Twiz. Okay. So here we go. Some water, sip of water. Let's do a swoop, and I'm going to get some chapstick while we swoop. So let's pick a swoop that will give me time to get a chapstick. We'll do this one.
Whenever I talk about this theory that I'm like, I don't even know how to explain it because it makes no sense. We'll listen one more time. We'll move to proceed. This is it. This is the whole thing right here. This is it.
I'm trying to tell her that this is a big deal. Like if we go to the police on the second extortion, they're going to catch the second extortion, and when they catch them, they're going to turn, and the second extortion is going to turn in the first extortion. And then when you catch the first extortion, the police are going to come talk to us. And then when we tell them what happened, you're going to be in a lot of danger. There's no way I can talk to the police. So by catching the second, it's going to turn in the first. And that's exactly what I say in there.
Perfect. Makes sense to me. Makes sense to me. Okay. Kidding. She is crazy. Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying, Twiz. I see what you're saying. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yep. I see what you're saying. Okay. That makes more sense then. By the way, she apparently gave, I'm sure you guys have seen, she gave an interview. I have not fucking even seen it yet. She gave an interview. We could totally watch that together if y'all are interested. I mean, I know every detail of that case. I've followed it since the beginning with that case. So, I feel like I probably should be breaking that down, but like we're covering so much stuff. But anywho, we could just watch that if you guys want. There's also another Vinnie Politan Court TV thing on some of the recent stuff with BK. So if there's any of that stuff too that you guys want to watch, we can always do that. Just let me know. Adelson's, dude, I have a playlist. That case is insane. I'm sure people will chime in. That case is fucking nuts. It's a good one. I've got a whole playlist. Triple extortion. Yeah. Yeah, because the way he explains it, it actually sounds like it goes into the third extortion, but also that was Heather's brilliant idea. It was also because what was it? We did all it's really a triple extortion because the second becomes the first is the triple layer, right? Yeah, that's why. The second becomes the first. That's the third extortion. That's how it gets to the third. Twist says it's awesome. It is awesome. I used to have it where this equals, and then it was like question mark, crazy face, whatever. And then Heather was like, no, it's third extortion. That's the math. And I was like, yes. But it's great. The Adelson case is awesome. And you know what? The other thing that's great is it's like, I don't want to be a broken record, but they've been working on this case for 11 years now, taking their time. It took them like 2 years to make their first arrest. They did their due diligence. In other words, it's a case you can feel good about where they have the right people and the right people are going to trial and there's not fuckery and like you're seeing justice done the right way. But also there's a lot of crazy, funny things with like the laundering of the money and all kinds of stuff. Monsters. It's almost like, how to describe it? I wouldn't say monsters. I mean, I wouldn't call anybody a monster. I just don't think of people that way. Right. The opposite of Idaho. Right. Yeah. Like they're like this rich family, like dentists and like lawyers. And anyway, we always joke and say like criminal masterminds, but like they failed miserably at it. I don't know. It's hard to summarize. Right. They hired people. It's a hitman case. They hired people. It's a lot. It's a case that you can watch and laugh at. Like there's a lot of like, it's definitely less, well, I mean, there's serious elements to it, but it has definitely got a lot more moments that lend themselves to humor than others. So maybe some other cases, but also, that like, it's like the right people, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not like a lot of these cases where they're really heavy and, it's a good one for all the reasons. It's a really good one. Twiz is joking because that was the funny theory that has become a meme. The double extortion, triple extortion has become like a meme of like, yeah. Right. Okay. The gist. Okay. Yes. Dan Markell was the victim. He was a good person and he was a brilliant law professor who was well loved. But yeah, anyone who wants, and actually I need to do another stream on that. Maybe we'll do it tomorrow because there's those recent docs for that case as well. I need to do that. Maybe we'll do that tomorrow. Right. A man died and he was It's really fucking sad, but everything else is kind of entertaining, right? Yep. Yeah. No, you guys, y'all always be apologizing to you. I don't get it. I derail myself. It's part of what we do here. It's part of what we do. You know, I expect it. I expect it. It's not derailing, you know, it's not derailing at all. I mean, there's live streams where we've gone off talking about what flavor, if sex ice cream was a flavor, what would it taste like? I don't consider that derailing. But here we're talking about in another case that I'm covering that is going to, you know, Donna's going to trial here in a couple months. Wendy's next, God willing. Let's get 5 on the screen just for that momentous occasion. 5, where are you? Where's Heather? Fuck's sake. Okay. But anywho. You don't know where Heather is. I hope she's okay. Heather, are you okay? I hope her dog's okay too. But anywho, so we love tangents. They're always time-stamped, you know. One of the funnest ones, Maisha was here earlier, right? For any of you guys who saw Maisha was there during the birth of the Squirrel Crew World Tour. That was a live stream. There was only a couple people that were there for that. It was during the Ezra McCandless coverage, and it was like, I don't remember what hour it was, but like at the time when we did this, there weren't that many people that were like in the chat anymore, and like it was like one of those things as it happens, where one thing leads to another. And then we did like the Squirrel Crew World Tour. That was one of the funnest things ever. And it was like a 2-hour or 3-hour tangent. And we had an absolute fucking blast. It was amazing. It was amazing. She was around earlier. Are you saying Heather? But yeah, I hadn't seen Maisha in a while, and I was happy to see Maisha because she was there for that. But also I was just happy to see her. But yeah. Okay, so here we go. Motion to strike the death penalty, autism spectrum disorder. All right. Hereby moves this court to strike the death penalty as a sentencing option in his case because Mr. Kohberger's autism spectrum disorder reduces culpability, negates the retributive and deterrent purposes of capital punishment, and exposes him to the unacceptable risk that he will be wrongfully convicted and sentenced to death. In making this motion, Mr. Kohberger relies on his right to be free from cruel and unusual punishment, his right to due process, his right to a fair trial, like all the rights, basically. So so in other words, you know, it seems like, you know, it took time, right, for this testing to be completed. He was found to have autism spectrum disorder. So like it's twofold, right? It's like strike the death penalty, but also should that not go through, right? They're going to use it or hoping to use it as mitigation should he get convicted, which was the document we just read. Mr. Kohberger is aware of the deadline previously imposed by the court scheduling order, but has good cause for filing this motion at this time. Good cause is laid out in an affidavit attached but filed under seal. Yeah. Okie dokie. Let's take a look here. I love a good table of contents. This is pleasing to me. Just saying. Okay. Things like this, where it's talking about how death is different, we've covered all of this at length in the other death penalty motions. So I'm not going to, in a lot of this, and there's Woodson versus North Carolina again. I'm not going to read all of it because some of it is copied and pasted into each of these documents. But y'all know there's a playlist. If you guys want to see any of that coverage of the previous death penalty motions in case you weren't there, feel free. I'm going to get to the parts that get more specific here as it pertains to the autism. Because all this, again, is just literally the same. And not that that's a problem. Okay, now we're getting to autism, though. All right. This reasoning applies with equal force to defendants who, like Mr. Kohberger, have autism spectrum disorder, ASD. ASD is a neurological and developmental disorder that affects how people interact with others, communicate, learn, and behave. People with ASD, including Mr. Kohberger, exhibit deficits in nearly all the same areas cited by the court in concluding that it is unconstitutional for people with intellectual disabilities to be sentenced to death because such sentences are not proportional and cannot be reliably imposed. Indeed, the pervasive media coverage emphasizing symptoms of Mr. Kohberger's disability demonstrates that the very risks recognized by the court are already being realized to his prejudice. Accordingly, this court must strike the death penalty as a sentencing option in this case. I think it's really funny that, like, in mainstream media, it seems like they're kind of saying, like, that Mr. Kohberger is going to try to use autism as a defense. It's like, it's just sad. They're not, like, did y'all not learn to read in school? It's the opposite. They're saying they don't want it to come in during trial for the guilt phase. It's just dumb. It's just dumb. It's only being brought up as it pertains to the death penalty. It's not being used as an affirmative defense. And not only that, that's impossible anyway in the state of Idaho because they don't have an NGI defense anyway. And honestly, even if they did, I don't think autism would qualify for that because the standard for that is like super, super, super fucking high. I think it works better in this case anyway as like I see it basically more as like a mitigation. Like that makes more sense to me because people who are on the spectrum don't tend towards violence, right? Versus like if you compare it to somebody who's like got like paranoid schizophrenia or something, right? You see there's there's a difference there. Okay. Hopefully Maisha is sleeping. Yeah. So, right. What are you saying? They have to do all this ahead of time? I mean, the other death penalty motions were filed. Well, I didn't read the document. They had to file for leave. They referenced it here earlier, but they had to file for leave to file 2 more motions because the deadline had actually passed. But they were granted, they showed their good cause and then it was granted. But the other motions came out, I think, in November. Okay, argument. Due to impairments in communication, reasoning, social skills, and impulse control, people with ASD are insufficiently culpable to be executed. The death penalty is only appropriately sought in a case when it falls into a very narrow the narrowing, we've talked about this at length, and involves a defendant whose extreme culpability makes them the most deserving of, we've talked about this at length. So again, if it's redundant, we're not going to go through it all because the narrowing of it all. In prohibiting execution of people with intellectual disabilities, the U.S. Supreme Court identified several characters that makes such defendants categorically less culpable than the average criminal. Because of their impairments, however, by definition, they have diminished capacities to understand and process information, to communicate, to abstract from mistakes and learn from experience, to engage in logical reasoning, to control impulses, and to understand the reactions of others. Ahead of time. No, they had to do this all. Their deadline was in November. I believe it was November. I read all of those. These are late because they were waiting on the diagnosis and they had to file a motion. They had to file a motion to have leave to file 2 death penalty motions past the deadline because it was waiting on this. Yeah, I believe it was November was the rest of them. I can look. I mean, it was back when Judge was still in charge. It was before the motions to suppress. Yeah, no, even earlier than that. Fuck, it was October. It was early October. Early October is when they were filed. So that was that, and I'm sure they filed them right before their deadline. So that would have been their deadline. That was when they filed them. That's when we covered them. And yeah. Oh, sorry, you might be right. The objection was October. Hold on. You might be right, Twiz. I'm double checking. You're right, September. Jesus. Wow, was it that long ago? That is wild. You're right, September. Where are the rest of the 2024 filings? You're right, September. That is wild. I saw, okay, thank you for clarifying that. I don't know why some of the filings look like they're missing here, though. It's weird. Like in 2024, they're starting in, unless they're just still loading, could be. Anyway, so yeah, September. Wow, that's insane. Tonka, wee, woo. It is a lot of details. Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. Yeah. So, wow, that was crazy. Yeah. So, you know what it was? Sorry. In November, that was the Shannon Gardner death penalty motions. That's why, because I'm covering that as well. That's why. That's where I got November from, guys. That's what it was. November was when they were due. And they had one more motion to strike well, actually, having said that, now that you add these other 2 in, not that it's a race, I'm just saying it was, they had one more death penalty motion filed in Shannon Gardner's case, but see, now the defense here has filed 2 more, so now they have 1 more. Anyway, so, oh, okay. Yeah, they changed the whole thing, and now it's all weird. You get used to it a certain way. Okay. Because of their, oh wait, we already read this. Okay, people with ASD exhibit impairments in nearly all of these areas. There are 2 primary diagnostic criteria for ASD. First, a person must display persistent deficits in social communication and interaction across multiple contexts as manifested by deficits in all 3 of the following areas. 1, social, emotional reciprocity. Okay, so that could be why they, but see, the thing that they mentioned, the lack of reciprocity, is weird because it's like, that seems like the opposite. Anyway, 2, nonverbal communicative behaviors used for social interaction. And 3, developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships. Second, a person must display restrictive, repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities as manifested by at least 2 of the following. 1, stereotyped or repetitive motor movements, use of objects or speech. 2, insistence on sameness, inflexible adherence to routines or ritualized patterns of verbal or nonverbal behavior. 3, highly restricted, fixated interests that are abnormal in intensity or focus. OCD definitely fits that for sure. And 4, hyper or hypo reactivity to sensory input or unusual interest in sensory aspects of the environment. As a result of these deficits, offenders with autism spectrum disorder tend to lack theory of mind, especially empathy and the ability to see from other perspectives, the ability to appreciate the whole context, executive functioning required for planning and organization, appreciation for the consequences of one's actions, and the ability to generalize learning from one situation to another. A comprehensive neuropsychological evaluation of Mr. Kohberger, conducted by Dr. Rachel Orr, found that Mr. Kohberger continues to exhibit all the core diagnostic features of ASD currently with significant impact on his daily life. Social deficits, including a diminished ability to understand the reactions of others, are perhaps the most widely recognized characteristics of ASD. People with ASD often have difficulty identifying the emotional or mental states of others and how to respond appropriately. Accordingly, it is difficult for people with ASD to interpret and respond to social cues, particularly when those cues are nonverbal. Dr. Orr confirmed that Mr. Kohberger has displayed lifelong deficits. We need more, hold on, we need more explanation for that to understand probably. Wait, what were you referencing? Sorry, I didn't see that until now. What were you referencing there, Twizzy Pants? Oh, right. Where was that? I agree. Where was that? Totally agree. I think I'll probably be able to find it here in just a second. Okay. I'm looking, Twiz. I'm looking. I think it's got to be the average criminal. Do they say normal though? Here's the reciprocity part. I don't know that they say normal. It might have been implied though. I think that's what you mean by that. But yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? I do agree that, like, regardless, it's tough because it is all relative. And that's really the thing, right? It is all relative. It's all relative. You know, EDB, I don't know if she coined the term, but it's the first place I heard it, neurospicy, and I love it, right? For people that are neurospicy, whether it's ADD or ASD or other things, you know, that, you know, they have that saying, normal is just a setting on the washing machine. My washing machine doesn't even have a normal setting. I'll just go ahead and say. What I do love, though, my washing machine plays a little song when it's done. It's really cute. It plays a little song to be like, I'm done. It's cute. Anyway, okay. Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the thing, too, right? Like, it's interesting because you'd almost think that the defense would actually not want to keep that out of the guilt phase because statistically speaking, autistic people are not violent. I mean, I've known a lot, like you guys heard me say a million times, like, but even if you go with like, that is not, if anything, it's like, it would make you less likely, I think, maybe, but yeah, so, okay. Okay, so hyper, I think we read that part. All right. As a result of these deficits, that's shitty to say, offenders with autism spectrum disorder tend to lack a theory of mind, especially empathy and the ability to see from other perspectives, to the ability to appreciate the whole context, executive functioning required for planning and organization. I mean, right there, you guys see why, like, a perfect example of why I'm saying, could this even just benefit him in terms of the elements of the crime? Like, because in that, we read it earlier, the defense was saying that the state intends to, could potentially try to use the autism to prove the elements of the crime. And I'm saying, I think the opposite is probably true. Perfect example. They lack the executive functioning required for planning and organization. You know what, that, you guys can see where I'm headed with that, right? Because, hello, premeditation, right? And to that end, let's just look up exactly what the statute says in Idaho. I'm sure we've gone over it a million times, but I want to just make sure. Okay, in Idaho, right? Because murder is different everywhere. Murder is the intentional and unlawful killing of a human being. Well, we need to break it down further than that. Hold on. What? That's not helpful. Okay, here we go. Yeah, it is helpful. Okay. All murder, which is perpetrated by means of poison or lying in wait, that's planning right there. Or torture, when torture is inflicted with the intent to cause suffering, to execute vengeance, to extort something from the victim, or to satisfy some sadistic inclination, or which is perpetrated by any kind of willful, deliberate, and premeditated. That's why I wanted to look this up. So check it out. This is important. You know what's not here is malice, first of all. I should have just done this at the time when we were talking about malice, right? Malice, cold-hearted, cold-blooded, all that, not here. Because like I said, the closest thing you try to say if you're trying to go from the elements of a crime and to get to like cold-blooded or whatever is when malice is involved, because there's different definitions. But malice is not involved here. I'm going to read this again. All murder, which is perpetrated by means of poison or lying in wait or torture, and we're going to skip past the rest of that because we know that that's not something that they're going to even be saying, I don't think, here. Or which is perpetrated by any kind of willful, deliberate, and premeditated killing. So there's no poison, right? So what else do we have? We have lying in wait. We have some sadistic inclination or premeditation. So you see why I just said what I said? Executive functioning required for planning and organization. You see what I mean, guys? Like, interesting to me that they're not wanting to bring this in. Executive functioning required for planning and organization, appreciation for the consequences of one's actions, and the ability to generalize learning from one situation to another. A comprehensive neuropsychological evaluation of Mr. Kohberger conducted by Dr. Rachel Orr continues. Yeah, I think we may have already read that part. Okay, social deficits, including a diminished ability to understand the reactions of others, are perhaps the most widely recognized characteristics of ASD. People with ASD often have difficulty identifying the emotional or mental states of others and how to respond appropriately. Accordingly, it is difficult for people with ASD to interpret and respond to social cues, particularly when those cues are nonverbal. Dr. Orr confirmed that Mr. Kohberger has displayed lifelong deficits in social emotional reciprocity, including limited perspective taking and limited sharing of affect/emotions with others. Along with difficulty recognizing the emotions of others, people with ASD often struggle to recognize and regulate their own emotions. This can manifest as diminished capacity to control impulses. Well, that you could see how the state could try to use that if it was going to be included in the guilt phase. It looks like it's probably not going to come in the guilt phase. But that might be what they were worried about, the defense. Dr. Orr observed Mr. Kohberger's impulsive tendencies throughout her evaluation, which were also reported by his family. Okay. Now, again, the only thing I will say, though, is impulse, though, that's kind of the opposite of premeditation. So, I mean, again, I'm just thinking hypothetically. It's not going to, I don't think it's going to be coming in the guilt phase, right? But if it did, in another world where let's say where it did, it could be coming down to the quibbling and the semantics over premeditation, right? Like because the state would probably try to say that even if it's an impulsive action, if you make the decision in a split second, it's still premeditated. Because you hear that sometimes, right? Like the aforethought factor of it all. Anyway, case law, it would be case law galore. The case law will be flying fast and furious on that one. Okay, reported by his family. Additionally, a need to engage in repetitive behaviors or interests is one of the diagnostic domains of ASD. For many people with ASD, this manifests in the compulsive behavior that cannot easily be controlled by rational thinking. Since childhood, Mr. Kohberger has exhibited compulsions around hand washing and other cleaning behaviors. Diminished ability to communicate is another hallmark of ASD. Language deficits are common among people with ASD, ranging from complete lack of verbal language skills to difficulty recognizing and understanding abstract language, sarcasm, and irony. God, that would suck. I can't imagine a life not being able to get like sarcasm, irony. I guess sarcasm most of all. Like, thrive on that. People with ASD universally struggle with pragmatics or the appropriate use of language for the situation at hand. These language deficits can become even more pronounced in stressful and anxiety-inducing situations. Although Mr. Kohberger has strong verbal abilities, he failed to recognize multiple idioms during Dr. Orr's evaluation. Interesting. Dr. Orr noted that his language is often over-inclusive, disorganized, highly repetitive, and overly formal. Another thing that's interesting is you can see how this is very much what we witnessed that when he was pulled over by that officer, right? Yeah, same, right? Sarcasm is like more than the spice of life. It's like the oxygen of life. Like people with intellectual disabilities, people with autism also have diminished capacities to understand and process information and to abstract from mistakes and learn from experience. Studies show that ASD is characterized by deficits in complex cognitive processing. In particular, people with ASD are generally able to identify concepts and learn established rules, but struggle with concept formation or the ability to develop new concepts based upon experience. One thing I will say is so far there's not been any typos or grammatical errors or anything like that in this document, which I appreciate. In other words, people with ASD may be able to comprehend information, but like people with intellectual disabilities, they have difficulty extrapolating that information and applying it to a new domain. These deficits in conceptual reasoning and problem solving are apparent even among people with ASD who have average or above average general intelligence. Indeed, despite his high baseline intelligence, Mr. Kohberger exhibits slow verbal processing and weaknesses in certain areas of executive functioning, including cognitive flexibility and organizational approach. Dr. Orr observed that Mr. Kohberger tended to perceive information in a more piecemeal manner. Piecemeal? Anybody else having flashbacks to those Lolliport videos? Piecemeal? Anyway, when I hear that, I'll forever think of Lolliport because you don't hear that very often in life, I feel like. But now it's just going to be, Lolliport. So as a result of these impairments, people with more than oxygen, yeah. Well, what's more than oxygen though? But yeah, totally. As a result of these impairments, people with ASD show diminished adaptive functioning like people with intellectual disabilities. Adaptive functioning encompasses those skills essential for real-world, everyday functioning that generally fall within the broad areas of daily living. For example, self-care, socialization, so interpersonal skills and communication, the ability to convey your wants and needs. Notably, people with ASD exhibit adaptive functioning that falls far below what would be expected given their cognitive ability. In its post-Atkins jurisprudence, the court has repeatedly emphasized that adaptive functioning is a key consideration in determining whether a person is intellectually disabled and thus excluded from execution. It follows that people with ASD who are similarly impaired in this area should not be sentenced to death. The deterrent and retributive aims of the death penalty are not met by executing people with ASD. In order for a death sentence to meet the Eighth Amendment's proportionality requirement, the proportionality requirement, it must satisfy the two penological, that's not penis related, guys, don't get excited, Goals of capital punishment. It's like the opposite. Greg v. Georgia. Again, this we've covered in the other motions, so I'm not going to repeat it. Being excessive, again, a lot of this is the same. We've covered all these standards before. Deterrence, right? Yeah, it's not going to make a difference for deterrence, obviously. The characteristics of ASD make deterrence even less salient as an aim of punishment, right? Obviously. Executing people with ASD does not meaningfully satisfy the penological aims of retribution or deterrence. Accordingly, sentencing people with ASD to death violates the Eighth Amendment. As awareness of ASD becomes more widespread, evolving standards of decency. That was a whole death penalty motion in and of itself back in the day, as in September. Again, a lot of this is the same. We've read through all of this with the other motions. The past 4 decades have seen a significant evolution in the understanding of ASD. Although infantile autism was first described by psychiatrist Leo Kanner in 1943, it was not included in the DSM until 1980. When the DSM was revised 7 years later, the condition was renamed from infantile autism to autism disorder to encompass all ages and developmental levels. The DSM-3 established new diagnostic criteria for autism disorder based on 3 domains of impairment. The DSM-4, and I believe for the period of time where I double majored in music therapy, it was the DSM-4 is what we used, because the DSM-4 was around from 1994 until 2013. So we were working with the DSM-4. And I remember when the DSM-5 came out, I was like, holy shit. And it reflects a major shift in the understanding of autism. DSM-5 established a comprehensive diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, which replaces Asperger's syndrome and autistic disorder. The current ASD diagnosis recognizes autism as a spectrum of conditions. Yep. It also consolidated the diagnostic criteria of impairments in social interaction and communication to a single domain, removed language impairment as a specific diagnostic criterion, and added unusual sensory sensitivity as a manifestation of the restrictive/repetitive behavior domain. As the psychological community's understanding of ASD has evolved, so has awareness of the condition. Oh, that's wild. I cannot imagine. ASD is now the fastest growing developmental disability in the United States. Interesting. The increase in awareness of ASD has coincided with greater efforts by the criminal legal system to account for the role that intellectual disabilities, developmental disorders, and mental health conditions play in offending people. Oh, offending people that commit crimes, guys, not like being offensive. Sorry, offending behavior. I guess still, though, that needs probably some clarification. Offending behavior, as in committing a crime. For example, there were 655 mental health courts. 2 states have enacted legislation barring people with serious mental illness from being sentenced to death. ASD specifically has been deemed relevant to defendants' interactions with law enforcement and the ability to formulate criminal intent. I'm interested in what they're going to say about this. Now they're citing a bunch of stuff. In State v. Burr, an appellate court reversed a defendant's convictions of sexual assault and endangering the welfare of a child because the trial court erred in excluding evidence of the defendant's Asperger's syndrome. The defendant proffered the evidence to assist the jury in understanding why he might act in a way that appears socially unacceptable to others. The intersection between ASD and the death penalty has gained recent attention with the case of Roberson, an autistic man sentenced to death in Texas for the alleged murder of his daughter. In addition to challenging the scientific flaws underpinning his daughter's diagnosis of shaken baby syndrome, oh God, I think I know this case. Mr. Roberson argues that his ASD contributed to his wrongful conviction because law enforcement misinterpreted his flat affect. Fucking hell. During the tragedy is evidence of guilt. Yep, I think I know that case, actually. Shaken baby syndrome has its own whole series of problems anyway. Mr. Roberson has also garnered support. Yeah, I know this case. From a broad coalition ranging from the lead detective who investigated his case to judges, psychologists, and advocates. Yeah. It has now been over 2 decades since the U.S. Supreme Court held that evolving standards of decency mandate a categorical bar on the execution of people with intellectual disabilities. Yeah, well, I mean, technically, technically speaking, if you go from the DSM, anything in the DSM can only change as often as the DSM is updated or edited, which is like every 20 years or so or longer, something like that. So, but I mean, just like with diseases, whether it's with anything, with literally anything, with science, I can't think of a single example on planet Earth in any category where it's like we already know all there is to know, right? We should be flexible enough to expand our definitions and understanding of things as we get more information, right? Okay. The overlap is apparent in Idaho's own intellectual disability statute, which in addition to a showing of significantly sub-average intellectual functioning, requires a showing of significant limitations in adaptive functioning and at least two of the following skills: communication, self-care, home living, social or interpersonal skills, use of community resources, self-direction, functional academic skills, work, leisure, health, and safety. If evolving standards of decency 20 years ago condemned the execution of people with intellectual disabilities due to their impairments associated with the condition, it follows that the execution of people with ASD who show nearly identical deficits is equally deplorable. I will say to this end, Tonka's saying there's nothing new under the sun. All right, bear with me for a second here. So this is kind of like the thing of like, if a tree falls in the forest, did nobody hear it or whatever it is? Like, I don't disagree that there's not anything new per se. The thing that is new is our own human understanding of things that were already there. So then that's why I said per se, because in effect, it becomes new once we understand it. If we understand something new for the first time, or something that we thought we understood, but we understood it incorrectly, and then we have a different understanding, it becomes new, even if it was already there, but we just didn't have a word for it, or we didn't have a full understanding for it, right? Because people are wrong all the fucking time. So that's my personal take. Okay. Death sentences for people with ASD are inherently unreliable because defendants with ASD cannot present mitigation evidence that will be meaningfully considered by the jury. The United States Supreme Court has long held that the qualitative difference between death and other penalties calls for a greater degree of reliability when the death sentence is imposed. In Lockett, the court held that this heightened need, right, interpretation, we don't understand shit. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that for sure. I agree with that. When the death sentence, right. In Lockett, the court held that this heightened need for reliability required the consideration of mitigation evidence because the sentencer's possession of the fullest information possible concerning the defendant's life and characteristics is highly relevant, if not essential, to the selection of an appropriate sentence. Critically, the heightened need for reliability is not satisfied by mere presentation of mitigating evidence. So this is not nearly as important here. They have to do it. They're going through why mitigating evidence is necessary. But again, this is kind of like boilerplate. It's not, they're not going to be told they can't present mitigating evidence. It's not going to happen, obviously. Okay, defendants with ASD are less able to meaningfully assist their counsel. The key diagnostic criteria for ASD significantly hamper an autistic defendant's ability to meaningfully assist counsel, particularly in the unique context of a capital defense. The first and most critical step in inadequate capital representation is establishing rapport with the client. Establishing a relationship of trust with the client is essential both to overcome the client's natural resistance to disclosing the often personal and painful facts necessary to present an effective penalty phase defense, and to ensure that the client will listen to counsel's advice on important matters, such as whether to testify. And how often do they not listen to advice on that? I'm just saying. And the advisability of a plea. The social communication deficits associated with ASD discussed pose a major barrier to developing the necessary rapport between counsel and client for effective capital representation. For example, people often convey warmth through nonverbal cues, such as posture, facial expression, and tone, which clients with ASD will not be able to recognize or interpret. Second diagnostic criterion, repetitive behaviors and interests, often manifests as hyperfocus on a particular topic at the exclusion of all others. Capital cases involve an enormous volume of information across different subjects. In this case, the state has provided 68 terabytes of discovery. To make informed decisions, a capital client must be able to comprehend the full landscape of his case. For defendants with ASD, their fixation on a single theory or piece of evidence will impair their ability to see the case in its entirety. That's a good point. That's a good point. And make reasoned decisions about its discretion. That's a good point. Relatedly, people with ASD tend to be rigid in their thinking and struggle with decision making. A complex capital case will rarely follow a linear trajectory. As the investigation and evidence evolve, so will the defense's strategy, and the client must be able to adapt. For capital defendants, the ability to pivot from a defense focused on innocence to one that is devoted to mitigation, or the ability to decide whether to accept a plea or risk a trial, or whether to suspend the short-term goal of proceeding to trial, like speedy trial, right? In order to achieve the long-term goal of fair and reliable adversarial proceedings is literally a matter of life or death. Yeah, particularly under the enormous and unparalleled pressure of capital prosecution, a defendant with ASD is likely to exhibit extreme inflexibility even in the face of necessity or becoming overwhelmed to the point of decision paralysis. That's really sad. Decision paralysis, I can't even fathom. These impairments cannot simply be overcome by a client who wants to be cooperative. Mr. Kohberger displays extremely rigid thinking, perseverates on specific topics. Perseverates. I mean, I'm like thinking persevere, but that is not what it is. Perseverates, I think it is, on specific topics. Processes information on a piecemeal basis. There's the lollipop reference again for my brain. Struggles to plan ahead and demonstrates little insight into his own behaviors and emotions. Even assuming Mr. Kohberger aims to be as helpful as possible in preparing the case, these mental deficiencies will invade every detail of that aid, from client relationship to fact investigation to mitigation investigation to pretrial motions to trial strategy. No matter how helpful Mr. Kohberger may wish to be, it is simply not possible for him to aid counsel in a way that someone without the deficits accompanying ASD would be able to. This lack of visibility is the precise concern articulated in Atkins. Tonka says, how many civilizations have come before us? How many societies have risen and fallen? In India, there is ancient technology that surpasses our own. Yeah, I agree. Agree with that. I don't know how many civilizations have come before us, but a fuck ton. Okay. The demeanor of a defendant with ASD will likely create an unwarranted impression of lack of remorse. At all stages of the proceedings, the defendant's behavior, manner, facial expressions, and emotional responses of their absence combine to make an overall impression on the trier of fact. An impression that can have a powerful... Now, this isn't really that... Well, having said that, trier of fact, the jury will be the trier of... Well, okay, trier of fact, usually that's going to be referencing the jury at the guilt phase, right? So I don't know, because this is... they're talking about the sentencing phase, so... I don't know that the jury is still called the triers of fact at that point because the rules of evidence don't apply. So I would say no. I would say the trier of fact is not relevant here because the rules of evidence don't apply, sadly, in the sentencing phase of a death penalty case in any state, by the way. Demeanor is particularly important when in capital trials. Yes. Yeah. Again, boy, perfect timing, right? Speaking of, the rules of evidence not applying, which is meh. Oh, and we read all of this. This was so interesting. The thing about the remorse. This was all cited in their other death penalty motions. This was very interesting. We went through all of that. It was crazy. Some of those studies were interesting. Due to the physical manifestations of their disability, people with ASD are particularly vulnerable to bias on account of their courtroom demeanor. The diagnostic criteria for ASD list repetitive motor movements, echolalia, and excessive smelling or touching of objects as symptoms of ASD. If anyone knows what echolalia is and wants to let me know in the chat, that'd be awesome. People with ASD often engage in repetitive self-stimulating behavior, which can include hand flapping, finger snapping, and body rocking. A juror seeing the defendant engage in any of these behaviors while sitting at counsel's table would perceive the defendant as strange. Now, I will say I've not seen any of those behaviors. Not that it matters anyway to me, but I'm just commenting. I'm just saying, like at the hearings and everything, right? Like, anyway. Subtle indicators of ASD can be just as damning for capital defendants, if not more so. Ability to make and maintain eye contact is a common symptom of ASD, which can be mistakenly interpreted as guilt or shame. Due to their difficulty recognizing the emotions of others, people with ASD may make facial expressions that are awkward and incongruent with the tone of the proceedings. Most concerningly for capital defense, people with ASD often display a flat affect, even in the face of highly emotional evidence, which can be interpreted as coldness or lack of remorse. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's how people would see it. Mr. Kohberger's ASD manifests in many of these highly prejudicial but completely involuntary mannerisms. Dr. Orr observed that he slightly rocks his upper torso. Okay. Especially while engaged in a cognitive task or listening to someone else, both of which are almost certain to occur during his trial. Shout out to Need Some Z's. Happy to see you again. Okay, repeating what someone else says. Thank you. Thank you for that. both of which are almost certain occurring. Right. Okay. His range of facial expression is limited. His baseline effect is stoic, and his expressions are sometimes incongruent with what is happening around him. Mr. Kohberger also exhibits atypical eye contact, including an intense gaze. As discussed below, his facial expressions, including lack of affect and concentrated stare, are already being assigned sinister meaning by observers. Yeah, that's true. They are. Jurors begin assessing a case from the moment they step into the courtroom. In this case, where jurors will be forced to determine whether Mr. Kohberger will live or die, Mr. Kohberger himself is essentially a piece of evidence to be examined and evaluated. Every movement and expression is subject to analysis. Due to his ASD, Mr. Kohberger simply cannot comport himself in a manner that aligns with societal expectations of normalcy. This creates an unconscionable risk that he will be executed because of his disability rather than his culpability. So, of course, I couldn't agree more. What I feel like Judge Hippler is going to want to see, right, is he's going to want to see case law that specifically references ASD. And that's going to be tough because I would think, because similarly to the IgG stuff, there may not be a lot of case law because, again, it is a newer thing. And remember, only since the DSM-5 in 2013 did they change their definition of it. But also, as we know, people with ASD are way less likely to be committing these types of crimes. So I don't know how much case law would even exist. But I mean, I'm just saying, I feel like Judge Hippler is just going to deny it anyway, sadly. But a judge who's actually assessing things but is still going to be critical, might be looking for ASD specific case law. Anyway, okay, people with ASD make poor witnesses. Concerns about the demeanor of a defendant with ASD apply with greater force when he chooses to take stand in his own defense. Again, it's interesting, right? Because we read that other motion in Limine from the state where they're like trying to kind of railroad, it was regarding the alibi, kind of trying to railroad him into taking the stand, which is crazy. I don't know how the fuck that is okay. I mean, it's not okay. I don't know how they're saying that. Like, really? Of all the things. Both verbal and nonverbal communication with the jury is impeded by the deficits experienced by someone with ASD, perhaps to an even greater degree than someone with an intellectual disability who may not experience the same level of social impairment. A person, and that's a good point. A person with ASD will struggle on the witness stand in myriad ways. Aside from atypical social behaviors, individuals with ASD may exhibit uncommon verbal or speaking patterns. Sometimes their phrasing is unusual, nonsensical, and exceedingly formal. They may take a long time to answer questions, which may appear evasive. They also may let out unexpected verbal utterances, which may come across as rude. They may misinterpret or nitpick certain questions. They may fail to pick up on cues which signal the end of a line of questioning. Such behavior may be understood as the defendant being cagey or unwilling to discuss a particular area or answer questions. Another example, when questioned in his jury trial, a defendant with ASD instigated arguments with the prosecutor over comparatively trivial detail while failing, unless redirected, to confront the underlying and critical question. Interesting. Due to the deficits associated with ASD, a defendant like Mr. Kohberger is just as likely as someone with intellectual disability to make a poor witness. Mr. Kohberger's speech is awkward both in its content and delivery. As Dr. Orr observed, his tone and cadence are abnormal, his interactions lack fluidity, and his language is often over-inclusive, disorganized, highly repetitive, and oddly formal. He's highly distracted by sounds or activity occurring around him, and he frequently looks side to side to monitor his periphery. As a result of his high distractibility, he often needs questions or instructions repeated. He frequently shifts the topic back to himself even when it is inappropriate. He uses abrupt, matter-of-fact phrases that would be considered rude. He carries on about topics in a circular manner and perseverates about specific non-essential details. These symptoms of Mr. Kohberger's ASD will alienate him from the jury and significantly hamper his ability to make a persuasive showing of innocence or mitigation. Laid out on the carpet? What does that mean? I don't know why I'm thinking of red carpet, because that makes literally no sense. But I don't know. What is that? Is that a saying? I just don't know. Evidence of a defendant's ASD will likely be perceived by the jury as aggravating instead of mitigating. It is well recognized by courts and scholars alike that the evidence of ASD, like intellectual disability in youth, is a two-edged sword that increases the likelihood that a defendant will be seen as dangerous and, as a result, sentenced to death. God, all these I can't stand some of this languaging. Anyway, in one study, several trial judges who were interviewed regarding the impact of ASD on sentencing believed ASD would be an aggravating factor, as an individual's inability to control his behavior might be an inherent danger and threat to himself, others, and public safety. The risk that juries fear about the defendant's future dangerousness will overshadow the mitigating force of defense evidence, especially pronounced in cases of ASD. ASD is beyond the comprehension of most jurors. I don't know. I think these days that's not the case. I think most of those jurors will probably have some experience or know some, it's very prevalent these days. And it is chronic, permanent, and untreatable. Research has found that neurotypical adults demonstrate negative implicit bias against adults with ASD. I don't know. I can't say what the general public does. I don't relate. Moreover, and particularly relevant to Mr. Kohberger's case in the media frenzy surrounding it, heightened media attention on ASD-associated crimes has raised public alarm. I literally have this. I've not heard this. ASD-associated crimes. I've never even heard of such a thing. Although there's little research on juror receptivity to ASD as mitigation evidence, studies have repeatedly found that jurors view evidence of serious mental illness as aggravating rather than mitigating. Several analyses demonstrate that although jurors believe in the abstract that mental health evidence will make them less likely to impose death, in reality, the evidence is often presented and discounted, presented and ignored, and presented and rejected and treated as an aggravator. One study of capital jurors who voted for death in cases where mental illness was a factor found that nearly half. Okay, and this was actually repeated in one of the other death penalty motions that we read. I remember this. And it was interesting because we did not know at the time this was coming, but they had a whole bit in there that dealt with this about mental illness because I remember, yep. In fact, I actually referenced this earlier tonight. The real capital juries are routinely transmogrifying mitigating evidence into evidence warranting execution demonstrates the inability to address this problem through jury selection or instructions. Capital sentencer must be able to give meaningful consideration and effect to all mitigating evidence that might provide a basis for refusing to impose the death penalty on a particular individual. This is important. The capital sentencer, so the prosecutor, right, must be able to give meaningful consideration and effect to all mitigating evidence. Like the prosecutor has to give all consideration to all the mitigating evidence, right? That could provide a basis for refusing to impose the death penalty. Now, remember, Idaho has specific languaging for the death penalty that instead of saying you have to find that it's warranted, it's like it assumes that it's not how to say it. They use it, the languaging is funny. It's like it basically makes them look for mitigation factors, essentially. It's like they're looking for reasons to find it unjust. That's kind of the way that it works. Instead of looking for reasons to find it just, they make their instruction is such that they're supposed to be looking for reasons to find it unjust, which I'm not for personally. I'm not for the death penalty, but I think that if you're going to have it, which I wish they didn't, that is a better way to have it than other places. Like I will say that much. Like but anyway, the reason I'm saying that is because that is in line with what we're seeing here, which is that they have to provide a basis for refusing to impose it. That goes along with the Idaho jury instructions, standard jury instructions regarding death penalty. However, experience shows that reality is different. Despite their impairments, these defendants are more likely to be sentenced to death. The court addressed the reality that evidence of mental illness is often a double-edged sword, right? Okay. However, the United States Supreme Court overruled Penry in Atkins and explicitly held that the double-edged nature of intellectual disability evidence is one reason why defendants with intellectual disabilities cannot be sentenced to death. The Supreme Court reiterated this principle when it categorically barred execution in juvenile offenders. Noting that the prosecution had argued that the defendant's youth was aggravating rather than mitigating, the court specifically rejected anything less than a categorical exclusion to address the problem. Even if this court rejects a categorical approach, it should remove the death penalty because case-specific factors create an unacceptable risk that a death sentence will be imposed in spite of factors requiring a lesser sentence, including a pervasive media narrative that assigns sinister meaning to symptoms of Mr. Kohberger's disability. I've literally never heard autism being assigned a sinister meaning, but then again, I'm not the person to weigh in on it because I don't know what the hell is going on in mainstream media. So, curious if you guys have seen it. And that's why we covered it earlier. I don't think you were here, Tonka, but that's why one of the motion in limine from the defense earlier that we covered is that the state cannot bring up autism during the guilt phase. Like, in other words, the way the defense wants to use autism is only in the sentencing phase and not in the guilt phase. So because of that, it's only going to be used, assuming that that is granted, right? It's only going to be used as mitigation evidence. And they can't use it as both a mitigator and an aggravator. So what that means is that they can't take that and try to twist it. The only way they would be able to do that is if it came up in the guilt phase. And it would have to be during something like through via cross-examining certain, like, for example, this Dr. Orr, right? Through cross-examining her and trying to ask questions that could indicate tendencies towards violence, as an example, maybe, right? Or through closing arguments. But that's why the defense filed that motion in limine, because it can't be used against him in the mitigation phase from the state or the sentencing phase, right? Because it's going to be mitigating evidence. And if it does get allowed in the guilt phase, they said they already have like experts on the ready for that. I actually think that will be granted. I wouldn't be surprised. I think that'll be granted. I 100% think that will be granted, because the thing is this, the defense is not trying to bring that up in the guilt phase, you know? So, and because it's mental illness, I mean, I don't know. I think it would be tough for, you know, like, okay, you know how it works? Like, think about like opening the door, right? There's things where it would be on the defense to bring it in, whether on purpose or on accident. So like something like mental health, right? Or something like this, right? Where, because there's not an NGI defense. Like that's one of the things. Like in states that have an NGI defense, the defendants are waiving, right? Basically all their like privilege to medical records for the state, right? That's part of it. They're like, here you go, right? That's like one of the things. Because normally that shit, they're not going to get. And again, Idaho not having an NGI defense, but similarly, right? This would not be coming up at all were it not for the defense having him tested, right? And the way I would see this going is that if the motion in limine is granted and it's like, okay, state, you can't bring this up. The way I would see this going, it'll be interesting to see if I'm right about this, but the way I would see this going is Judge Hippler saying something like, look, defense, if you open the door, then that's it, right? What that means is like, if it's during the guilt phase, right? And the defense gets into something about ASD, it could open the door. But it would, the way I see this would be something that would be on the defense to bring in. I don't think the state has any right to bring this in at all. In fact, I'm actually surprised to see a motion in limine about it, because I just would think it wouldn't even be admissible unless the defense brought it up. I mean, I'm with you on that. Need some Z's. I know. I'm with you on that. It would just be such a huge issue on appeal. I don't know. Again, I know. I feel like I shouldn't. Yeah, get my hopes up. It's like really nothing would surprise us, I guess. Is it daylight savings? Wait, what? Is it daylight savings for real? For real? Is it spring forward? Oh my God, it's spring forward. No wonder. That makes sense. It's spring forward already. Holy shit. Happy to see you, Meg. Wow. Well, welcome, guys. Happy spring forward. Let's do a little scroll dance party. Dance party. Yeah. Scroll party. I don't know. I'm just doing a little dance over here. Don't mind me. Old daylight savings dance, I guess. Interesting. Okay, so outlets ranging from the New York Times to true crime video bloggers have assigned nefarious meaning to symptoms of Mr. Kohberger's ASD. It just blows my mind. Multiple news sources have, for example, focused on social deficits, particularly as they relate to his interactions with women. Oh, God, I can't even with this. I can't even with this. I just can't. I'm not going to even give that any whatever credence by reading it. It's also no surprise that he came across socially awkward or that he struggled to adapt to professional norms. These impairments are hallmarks of his disability. Lack of facial expressions and abnormalities in eye contact and body language are so emblematic of ASD that they're explicitly listed in the diagnostic criteria for the disorder. But to the online commentators who have developed a cottage industry devoted to parsing Mr. Kohberger's every movement, these symptoms of his disability are sure signs of his guilt. Oh, God. I cannot even with this. I'm not gonna do it. These widely viewed and highly prejudicial media reports, draped in the language of expertise and analysis, demonize Mr. Kohberger for his disability in an environment so tainted. Now, having said that, right, I will say, the only thing I'll say is this. A lot of this shit that they're talking about is shit that came out a long ass time ago, right? In other words, they didn't know. And there's a reason I think this matters. It wasn't because of the disability. Like, my point being, I don't think that Asperger's has a connotation for violence and all this, right? Like, and in fact, people that were saying things like he's a stone cold killer or whatever the fuck, right, that they're referencing here, they weren't saying he was on the spectrum. I don't think. I think they were probably calling him a psychopath, right? Is that what you guys would think? Or if you guys watched shit like that, you know? So in other words, I would think, and I would hope that people would check themselves with this and be like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be so quick to judge people and diagnose them as a psychopath, right? I mean, you shouldn't anyway, but like, so in other words, it's not like they had that information and they're like, yeah, he looks like a psycho killer because of the Asperger's, right? I don't think that's what people were thinking. Do you guys agree? Oh, that's fun. Board games. What kind? Like, it's just, right. I mean, perfect example right here to prove my point. Bryan Kohberger's psychopathic stare. Right. This is exactly the type of shit I'm talking about. None of it was like, oh, it's definitely ASD, right? Nobody was saying that I heard of. Okay. These widely viewed, I already read this. In an environment so tainted by rampant and vitriolic conjecture, ooh, I love Chutes and Ladders. It is impossible for Mr. Kohberger to receive the individualized sentencing determination, including full and careful consideration of mitigation evidence that the Constitution demands whenever the state seeks to extinguish a human life. The sustained national media attention on this case also absolutely. And that's the thing, right? Because everybody's so quick to be like, oh, it's a psychopath and the killer stare and all this bullshit, right? And it's like, I mean, dumb. Mousetrap, also a fun game. The sustained national media attention on this case also repeatedly emphasizes that the alleged crime is brutal and shocking in nature. Well, I mean, you know, people can say that about anything. These types of cases were of particular concern to the U.S. Supreme Court and underpinned the categorical approach in Atkins v. Roper, again with that one, or Atkins and Roper, rather. Likewise, a jury in this case will be emotionally overwhelmed by the factual allegations and simultaneously looking at a defendant who appears to be emotionally uninvested and unmoved and who cannot persuasively testify in his own defense. There's little doubt that this reality will overpower any mitigating arguments based on ASD as a matter of course, amounting to an unconstitutional risk that Mr. Kohberger, on account of his disability, will be unreliably convicted and sentenced to death. Conclusion. For all the reasons set forth, Mr. Kohberger's ASD prevents him from being sentenced to death in a manner that accords with the constitutional requirements of proportionality and reliability. Like juveniles and people with disabilities, he's insufficiently culpable to be sentenced to death. The aims of deterrence and retribution will not be satisfied by his execution, and he faces an unacceptable risk, quote, that the death penalty will be imposed in spite of factors which may call for a less severe penalty, end quote. As such, the death penalty must be struck as a possible penalty in this case. Right. Couldn't agree. But welcome back, by the way. But yes, that was exactly what I was trying to say, but maybe I wasn't quite as articulate. Nobody is saying, right, that's exactly it. Because the ASD thing just only, a week ago or whatever, we learned that, right? And so that's the thing that's what I was saying, was that people were just misinterpreting the symptoms and then calling him a killer or a psychopath. I mean, again, the example even just up here, right? Like that's what I was referencing, like all the shit that they were talking about here, where it's like this bullshit, cold iciness and all this bullshit. This was from, who knows, probably as soon as he was arrested, right? All this shit, right? The body language and all that shit. If they were saying anything, what is it? Cold, stone cold, stone cold killer, ice, whatever the fuck, monster, evil. And then if they were they probably would say things like psychopath. And again, we actually see that here. Psychopathic stare, sociopath. Never had I heard anybody say anything about autism, because that's not, again, they're misinterpreting the symptoms. Is exactly it. So, but the reason it's interesting is because what the defense is saying here is that, like, where is it? Demonizing him for his disability, which, yes, but it's not like they were demonizing the disability. In other words, right? Like does that make sense? Because they weren't like, the autism was not on the radar for, at least for the mainstream media and shit, right? I know that, I'm sure that, many of you guys and other people have said that they can recognize some of the behaviors. Like, we don't really have that much to go off of. And I don't think diagnosing people is good for people that don't, you know what I mean? But I understand that people can relate to it, and like things like his traffic stop and whatnot. To me, that seems normal, but I know that there's some people who are like, that looks like autism. But as far as the mainstream media, no one ever said that. I never said anything about that. It was like psychopath, sociopath, killer, evil, monster, your classic fare as an FARE. So yeah. But yeah, absolutely though about that. Like they were just misinterpreting it for sure. But welcome again. So anybody who wasn't here earlier, we took a big deep dive into what's her fucking face? Ruby, Dr. Ruby, whatever, and she had some stupid ass nickname. Ruth, that's her name, Ruth Ballard, who goes by Ruthy. That was insanity. That was absolute insanity in her children's books and whatnot. That was crazy. Like I said, if you guys want, we could do a whole live stream deep diving that, and it would be a whole thing. Totally can do it. Totally possible. Yeah, that's a board game. Love Hungry Hungry Hippo. Love the board games. You guys, so I invented this game called Flagmasters. We love Night 5, by the way. And it's a game that's not like a board game. It's kind of like a card game, but I physically made it myself. Like as in like physically made it. And basically the theme of it is like flags of the world. So the part that I made was I didn't quite finish, but I got through most of them, all of the flags of the world. And y'all should know, well, you guys have seen, I can't draw to save my life. Literally cannot draw to save my life. So like, I'm not the person to be drawing. So like, I literally had went through box after box of markers, like a little kid, right? I mean, but this was not that, this was like, I don't know. I was in my 20s. I was in my late 20s, probably, believe it or not, because I invented this game and I was like, this is a really good game. And I had all these rules and had all these points. And basically the point, there was actually a good amount of strategy involved, but the premise of it, like the base of the game was like, you have a flag, right? And you just get the picture of the flag. And on the back of the index card, like one side's the flag and the other side is the country name, and they're color coded for difficulty level. And the more difficult, the more points you get. And the reason I say difficult is because there's a lot of flags that look very similar to each other. So a flag could be a 5-pointer based on many things. It could be a country that nobody remembers or thinks about. It could be a flag that looks like all these other flags. There's different things that could make them difficult. And then the country's on the other side with the answer, right? And so it's like you have teams, and then basically it's like, that's the whole thing, is like recognizing the flags. But there was like a good amount of strategy involved. Anyway, I have it literally it's like right here. I have it in a drawer right here. Flagmasters is what it's called. And then I never got to do much with it, but I made the game and it was fun. So there you go. I don't know fun with flags. But as far as board games from TV shows, there's the Cones of Dunshire. You guys know what I'm talking about with that? Cones of Dunshire? Any Parks and Rec fans out there? Freaking love the Cones of Dunshire. The Cones of Dunshire sounds a lot like Magic the Gathering. Does anybody here play Magic the Gathering? I feel like play is not the right word, but that's the word that people use. Because it's like not that type of game. See, game doesn't even feel like the right word either. Does anybody here do Magic the Gathering? Just out of curiosity. So, I've never seen The Big Bang Theory, actually, but I don't watch TV. I just watch, you guys know, law, court. Bunny knows about it. Cool. Yeah, well, I'm one of them nerds. I'm happy to be a nerd. So we have some new filings here, but nothing too interesting. Well, I will cover real quick because this is not a long one, but this is interesting. This no contact. So motion to modify the no contact order. So state of Idaho. Wait, is this the one I was thinking of? Oh yeah, I guess this was the one. Yeah, state of Idaho. So moves the court for modification to the no contact order previously filed here and prohibiting the defendant from having any contact. No, maybe there was a different one. Well, we're already reading this one. Prohibiting the defendant from having any contact with the father of one of the victims. This motion is based on the fact that the father has requested the addition of his wife and stepdaughter for the no contact order. Okay, yeah, that's not the one I was thinking of. Because anyway, all right. Then there was the defense is filing an additional expert witness disclosure, which is interesting. But what we're going to be doing next time, there's a bunch of these relating to IgG. So I'm sharing the wrong thing. So what we're going to be doing next time is, this is going to be really interesting. So we're going to cover, and it'll be tomorrow, we're going to be covering the DNA under the fingernails, first of all. We're going to be covering, and then the middleman, because he's the dude from Occam, right? And then we're going to be doing hold on, I'm trying to think. I think I might have wanted to include the inflammatory evidence, but anyway, but we're going to be doing the big ones here, the IgG here. And then there's another, IgG in here somewhere. My eyes are not seeing it. Eyeballs. See, the thing is sometimes they do IgG like with the letters and it's easy to spot. And then other times they just like spell it out and then it's like, well, fuck. Anywho, but there's one from the state and there's one from the defense. Oh yeah. So here's the states, right? Here's the states where it's spelled out. Investigative genetic genealogy. And then the defense has one that says IgG, right? That's why I couldn't see it. And I think there's something else I was planning on doing. It might be the one, death penalty comments. Anyway, I'll have to take a look. I have a whole thing. But yeah, but with the bulk of it's going to be the DNA under the fingernails and the IgG. Oh, sorry. The biggest, and then I just blanked and now I remembered. The other one is the other big death penalty motion. That's what it is. That's what it is. It is the other big death penalty motion. That's what we're going to be doing tomorrow. Wherever it is, motion to preclude the death penalty and adopt other necessary procedures due to the state's disclosure violations. So this is like akin to like what Lori Vallow did. That's what we're going to do tomorrow as well. Yeah, that's what it is. So it's the DNA under the fingernails, all the IgG stuff, of which there are 3, and then this big death penalty motion. And I think tomorrow I'll probably also try to set up something to do the rest of the Donna Adelson updates. Yeah, so it's done. So yeah, crazy, right? Spring forward. Wow, March. I was thinking that was April. Wait, who's me? What me? What me now? What did I say? Oh, where are you joining us from, Miss Pottage? Are you in UK? Maybe? Morning here. Might be in the UK. But we have people all over the world. For anyone who would like to join the Discord and hasn't, I'll put a link in the chat, or well, Nightbot will as well there. Oh, cool, in the UK. Awesome. We have a lot of scroll. That's what made me think of it. We have a lot of scroll friends in the UK. So shout out to the UK. Love it. We also do, for anyone else who's interested, we do also have, this is brand new, we do have memberships now as well. We're already rocking and rolling with members only stuff. Doesn't have to be workers only. I'm just waiting for people to say what else they would like to see. But yeah, I feel like during the live streams, I always kind of have these different ideas, but then I sort of wait for somebody to be like, yeah. And then like, I don't know if anybody says anything, but anyway, you know, I'm here for you guys to do whatever y'all want. So if anybody plays violin, Twiz sort of had a semi request in a way. Wait, what? Me? I said that? I don't even know what Sheldon is. Is that a person? Is that a game? Is that a board game? Is it a board game? Well, you know what? Don't even get me started on the viola, but we could do viola jokes. That would be a whole thing. Twiz used to play violin. Twiz could play violin again. So, if anyone wants to hear viola jokes, just let me know. Violas, man, tell you what. Yeah, I've never seen The Big Bang Theory. I don't know. I've never seen The Big Bang Theory. Shut up, Twiz. Go to the corner. You're banned to the corner, Twiz, for that. Blasphemy. It's really funny because when we were, Meg, you were there, Meg, when we were doing the hearing for Karen Reed the other day, the one where we did everything twice. It was so not nice. We did it twice. And we took a little, in the middle, a big jaunt, rather. I was going to say little, it wasn't little, it was a big jaunt to read the Gretchen Voss article, which apparently like nobody really read. And apparently neither did the attorneys because they both misquoted it. But anyway, it was so funny because it was one of those moments where I realized just how long it's been since I've seen like regular shit, like TV, movie, anything, because I was like, oh, I forgot what narrative looks like. You know what I mean? Like I went to go read it and it was really funny because I was like, wow, like this is crazy. Like I'm just not used to spend so long, you know? It's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. Well, Miss, if you didn't know this, do you have a private teacher? I teach private violin lessons. I've been doing this for fucking ever. I've been playing since I was 3. I mean, it's my thing. It's the thing that I do. And I teach people from all over the world because most of my students are virtual. People that live here can have lessons in person, but most people are virtual, even if they live here, because it's more convenient. So if you want a teacher, let me know. Let me know. Because I would love to help you. I had a student start lessons when he was like 87 years old. He was a retired veteran. And it was on his bucket list before he died. And sadly, he died like after a year. But you know what? He died checking things off his bucket list. And one of them included learning the violin. Had you read it, Meg? I didn't remember you saying you had already read it. Maybe you did say that. I remember Need Some Z's was there. And she said she had not read it. I can teach you to read sheet music if you want. I can teach y'all to read sheet music. I guarantee you. I can teach anybody to do this stuff. I mean, I teach kids that are 3 and 4 years old living in other countries and other states how to play the violin with having no background. I mean, stuff like this I thought would be impossible. And then what happened was my students were like, no, you can do it. So like, I used to have a rule, like it used to be no virtual lessons, right? And then it was like, my students wore me down. This is long before COVID, because they would like go on vacation and they're like, we can't go on vacation and we want to keep having lessons, right? So they wore me down. I was like, fine, I'll try it. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I can do this. But this was students who I was already teaching, who already had a proper setup and everything, found, technique. Anyway, long story short, COVID hit, right? And then I had a student who I was teaching who had a younger sibling who wanted to learn, and they were moving away. And this kid was really young. And I was like, I don't know. What I said was, I was like, no, I'm going to draw the line. I'm not going to teach somebody virtually who I've never had a lesson with in person, because I thought to myself, there's no way I'm going to be able to make sure they have a proper setup. Anyway, again, they wore me down a little bit, one thing after another. It's like with every single thing where I thought there's the line. Nope, there's no line. And we just do it, so that's funny. So whether it's reading music or, again, just like the technique, but that's awesome that you're playing. I want to know way more about where you're at, Miss Pottage. Where are you at? Are you learning Suzuki? What are you playing? And do you have a private teacher? I want to know all of the things. That's awesome. And good for you for doing that, for real. It's not easy to learn new things as an adult, or it's much harder, I should say, right? And I will say, like with violin, everybody, doesn't matter who you are, you're going to suck at first. And that's the thing. Piano's easy. Piano's easy. You know why? It's always in tune. You can't fuck it up. It's like cheating, honestly. Violin, in my opinion, and not just my opinion, other people, it is the best, but also the hardest instrument in the world. And everybody's going to sound not great when they first start, but that is okay. So that's one thing, I always say to my students, learning life through violin and learning violin through life, because you have to become okay with sucking. Like violin will teach you a lot about yourself. You will have to face all of your demons. You will have to learn how to do things that I could go on and you guys would probably just hate me. So I will not go on and on, but I could go on and on about the benefits of how it makes you a better person. Anyway. Yeah, it's harder than the harp. Of course it's harder than the harp. Harp's easy. Piano's easy. Drums would be hard for me, but I don't know about harder than the violin, but drums would be hard for me. French horn is supposed to be one of the hardest instruments also. And I had a friend in college who was doing an ed degree, and he was a cellist, and he was required to teach French horn. Cause like if you get an ed degree, you have to be able to teach instruments that you've never played. So he had to teach me how to play French horn, and he was a cellist. I'm a violinist. So we're both like, we don't know the fuck all about French horn. Anyway, I came in to play for the exam, which was like his exam, but I'm playing. And the French horn teacher was like, dude, you could switch majors and become a French horn major right now in college. And she wasn't kidding. I was like, you're fucking kidding me. She was like, do you have any idea how anyway, I'm like, you've got to be kidding. There's no fucking way I have a knack for the French horn. Like, this is ridiculous. And it sounded terrible. But apparently in the world of French horn, it was good. It's just silly. Okay, you need a teacher. You need a teacher. I'm just not, even if it's not, it doesn't have to be me. You need a teacher. I will say this much. Okay. I play a lot of fucking instruments. I say this to everybody. Okay. If there's one instrument that you can't learn on your own, it's violin. And it's because of the setup. The setup is very not intuitive. Okay. You need someone to help you with the setup at the very least. Even if you can read music, doesn't matter. Even if you've played other instruments, even if you can play cello or even viola, which is most similar, right? You need a teacher. That is my words of wisdom to you for yourself, because you will be glad you have one. It is really important. I think most instruments you can teach yourself, really, again, especially if you learn violin. Everything else seems really easy by comparison. But it's just with violin, it's very specific. The triangle, that's hilarious. And that's why, thank God nobody's asked me to do this, but that is why I don't do these little, there's people, don't watch them. guys, don't ever watch these tutorials for violin. Tutorials on YouTube, fine. Violin, no. There's people that do these tutorials for like, I'm sure I've never watched them. I'm sure they're out there because there are for everything. People that are like, here's 5 steps to playing by da-da-da. No, I'm sorry, but there's some issues there ethically and other things. Like, you should not be doing that. In other words, what was I going to say? Like, while I could have been doing that type of thing of like, here's 10 steps to playing the violin. No, not happening. Sorry, I'm not lying to people. And that's insane. Like, it's BS. It's clickbait. It's everything that I hate about everything that I hate. It's just disingenuous and it's just slimy and gross. And it just makes my skin crawl just thinking about it. 10 steps to drawing a better stick figure. Sure. Great. I would be surprised if there's any video that could give 10 steps to get me to draw a better stick figure, because that's how terrible my drawing is. But that at least would be more realistic to me and more not and less deceptive, right? Oh yeah. We got a band. So yeah, like the only type of music videos that I've done that are like tutorial-ish, like have to do with guitar, because that's really different. And it's just simple stuff like how to use a different type of tuning and stuff like that, right? But it's just very different. Like that is totally, people that play guitar can watch that and they can do it. And there you go, right? But yeah, with violin, it's very different. So I just, I'm glad your neighbors haven't complained. I'm so glad you're learning violin. I would highly encourage you to get a teacher for your own sake. I really, really, really would. You'd be very glad. There's no way, Twiz. There's just no way. There's no way. Ain't no way. So this was interesting because I started out by accidentally being on the wrong stream. So I need to make sure I reset that one up for tomorrow. And Twiz. Isn't viola just like a lower tone? I don't even know where to begin. I love the way you asked the question, though. That's great. Hold on. There's only one way to answer. Well, okay, hold on. Okay, ready? So I think the real question here that Twiz is asking is, what is the difference between a violin and a viola? Is that the question? Because if so, I have the answer. Well, there's more than one. What's the difference between a violin and a viola? 1, the viola burns longer. 2, the viola holds more beer. 3, you can tune the violin. We all know that a viola is better than a violin because it burns longer, but why does it burn longer? It's usually still in the case. What's the difference between a viola and a coffin? The coffin has the dead person on the inside. What's the difference between a viola and a trampoline? You take your shoes off to jump on a trampoline. Oh my God. Oh my God. What's the definition of perfect pitch? Throwing a viola into a dumpster without hitting the rim. Why do so many people take an instant dislike to the viola? It saves time. Oh my God. Oh, this is so good. There's so many of these. Oh my God. Why is a viola solo like a bomb? By the time you hear it, it's too late to do anything about it. Oh my God. Oh, wow. Dude, y'all, get ready with your that's what she says. Get ready with your that's what she says. Why is a viola solo like premature ejaculation? Because even when you know it's coming, there's nothing you can do about it. Oh my God. That's a new one on the list here. That's a new one. Look at that. Oh my God. Wow. How do you get a violin to sound like a viola? Play in the low register with a lot of wrong notes. Yeah, but see, Meg, that's the thing. You say you're terrible at the viola. That's not your fault. That's the viola's fault. The viola is terrible at the viola. That's the thing. That's really the thing. So the viola jokes, this is a thing in the classical music world. this is a thing. The violists will be the first to make, this is a whole thing. It's just the way that it is. This is not me. This is a meme. This is like an established thing. They are the joke of the entire freaking orchestra. Seriously. Doesn't matter which orchestra. Any orchestra in the world, viola jokes is the thing. What do a viola and a lawsuit have in common? Everyone is happy when the case is closed. What is the range of a viola? As far as you can kick it. Why shouldn't you drive off a cliff in a mini, like a mini car with 3 violas in it? Because you could fit in at least one more. Oh. What's the difference between a violist and a prostitute? 1, a prostitute knows more than 2 positions. 2, prostitutes have a better sense of rhythm. Oh my God, another one with the sexy times. What is the similarity between a violist and a prostitute? Both are paid to fake climaxes. That's hilarious. Oh my God. All right. What's the latest crime wave in New York City? Drive-by viola recitals. That is just so good. Just so good. Oh my God. Oh my God. I love it. What is that word? Batchet? I have no idea what that means. Batchet? Is that a word? Huh? It's Twiz. It's just a thing. It's just the brunt of the orchestra. It's the brunt of all the jokes. It just is a thing. I don't even know how to explain it because I've never known anything else since I was a baby. It's just an established thing. And it's in a way that we're laughing with them, yes, we're laughing at them, but also with them, and they're also laughing at themselves. It's just a thing. It's like, it's not like in a way that is like discriminatory or whatever. It's like, I don't know how to explain it. I'm trying to think if there's another example, but it's hard to explain because classical music is very different. Like where it's an established thing of like people aren't really getting their feelings hurt, right? Like violists expect this. They will be the first to tell you a new viola joke. One thing I will say is most violists were violinists, but then at some point in orchestra, some teacher said, "Hey, do you want to try the viola instead?" And they were a kid and they said, "Sure." And it was because sometimes they weren't as good as the other violins. So basically, I will say the violinists who aren't quite as good, because everybody signs up to play violin and no one signs up for viola. And so when they have too many violinists and no violists, then they take some of the kids that are playing violin and they kind of talk them into playing viola. It's not, I mean, some people choose to do both, but like a lot of the people that I was friends with that played viola were like, they started out on violin and either their teacher switched them or something like that. Usually it was their teacher's idea. Oh, interesting. Never heard of it. Interesting. Huh. Twiz is going to learn viola. I mean, it's a bigger violin. So the viola has the strings C, G, D, and A. And we have G, D, A, E. So violins are smaller. Violins are better. But the biggest thing is the repertoire. So like the repertoire for violin is way better. And that's the thing. You know, with viola, you know, they're usually playing other instruments repertoire that's been arranged for viola. You know, the viola plays an alto clef. If you're like, what the fuck is alto clef, right? Yeah, no one plays an alto clef except for viola. And like maybe a saxophone, but it's not common, okay? Whereas we play in treble clef, which is the best. I'm just kidding. Okay, the bat thing. Okay. Oh, this thing. Runkle has one of these. I mean, kind of. It's similar. It's similar. It's similar. I forget what it's actually called. It's similar to this. It's got like spiky things instead of, it has like multiple spiky things instead of one, but it's kind of similar. Interesting. Wow, it's funny because in the Google search, some of the things that are coming up are like baguettes, which is interesting. Like the food, you know? Interesting. Wait, what's us? Wait, what? 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 Baguettes? Baguette. Oui, oui. Anyway. So y'all, that'll be it. What do I think happened with what? Violas? I'm plotting on the violas, right? Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. So I was saying, right, they have way less repertoire. That's one of the things, right? Violin has all the repertoire, like the best repertoire. But it's also better just in all the ways. Sorry, I'm just laughing. Y'all are so funny. I have literally no opinion because we don't have enough information. I will have no opinion until we are well into trial, I would imagine. I have no clue. I have no opinion. Some cases before trial, there's a lot of information out there, right? To where you can have a pretty good idea and you'll always learn more at trial, but you know, you might have more available. Murdoch was an example of that. There's others. This case, nope, we don't know anything. And so I have literally no opinion, which is nice. It's great. I actually appreciate it because I am completely, I can tell you guys that in terms of what happened, quote unquote, I'm like completely, I have no bias, right? I mean, I think that Judge Hippler is biased, right? I mean, you guys know. Like I'm assessing the lawyering. I'm assessing the state. I'm assessing the lawyering. We are not going to get to anything relating to what happened until trial. I mean, we've been getting more, at least we got like the 911 call, shit like that. But like, there's so much missing. It's impossible to say. Meg says that we're awake. You guys are so funny. Yeah, I mean, MPD was a disaster. I think that's clear. Why is cello cooler than violin? I have no idea why you would think that. That's not correct. Right. I mean, he wrote a book that was terrible. It's too stupid idea. Everybody trying to be Miss Becky these days. Jesus. If you're going to talk shit, it has to be about the viola. That's like the thing. Literally. If you want to fit in with the cool kids, by cool kids, I mean classical music nerds. Talk shit about the viola. But anyway, guys, my Frodo is looking at me like he needs to go out. And unfortunately, I don't have, we've got way more documents to read, but I've got them slated for tomorrow. So, I think we're going to have to call it a live stream, call it a day. But we will be back tomorrow. And like I said, I think there will be 2, probably more than likely. But yeah, I would go forever, but the thing is, I'm Frodo's mommy and there's nobody else to take care of him. And he's looking at me like he needs things. Y'all are funny. I mean, we'll be back with each other soon for sure. But I don't know who that Coomer sounds like something naughty. I don't know who that is. If that's a person, maybe there's a joke in there or that's what she said. But anywho, you guys are awesome. I love y'all. Y'all are the best. I should say real quick, y'all are more than welcome to say what you think happened or didn't whatever, as you guys know, right? I have no, just because I've not, you guys are probably pretty aware. I've not been exposed to some of the different alternative or just whatever, right? Like where you guys hear stuff and you come in and you're like I just have, I just read the court documents and watch the hearing, you know what I mean? So I learn a lot of that stuff from you guys. Y'all are more than welcome to discuss it just because I, can't bring new information to you guys like that. I can maybe bring, or hopefully legal information or what have you, or what I think we might see during trial in terms of, witnesses and whatever. But anyway, in terms of like what actually happened, I totally appreciate y'all going through what you think and whatever. And that is totally cool. Like, I would have literally nothing to offer there or opine on, as they say. So. Oh, okay. Interesting. Oh, that's interesting. I knew Scott Green. That's funny that his first Comer. Weird ass fucking name. What the hell does that? Are you saying like in the game of Clue? Like I did it with a viola? That's funny. That'd be a horrible way to die. I'm like, if somebody got murdered with a viola, that's just not even fair to them. Oh, Coomer. Okay. Weird. What a weird fucking name. Yeah. Weird. So, but yeah. So I appreciate everybody's different perspectives. It's y'all are always welcome to share that type of information. And, I appreciate, because you guys y'all are the best. I love that we never have any issues with people. Glenn was our only troll, as y'all know. And that was long ass time ago. Death by viola. Yeah, not a way to go. Anything but that. I'd take the bat shetty thing over a viola. Literally anything would be better. But anywho, yeah. So I just wanted to say that I appreciate you guys. I love y'all. I love all of y'all's insight and everything else. I think that's the command there for Meg saying Glendy. There it is, right there. But yeah, but other than that, y'all are awesome. And I will see you guys soon. Squirrel out.